This episode of the Chugcratic Seminar will contain spoilers for Transformers 1. If you don't wish to be spoiled, you know what to do. Otherwise, class in session.
I could just stick her in car mode and just be happy forever.
It's like the most painful-looking Halloween costume in existence.
Soundwave, I didn't mean to get you a virus. I just needed the free Robux.
I don't want to wake up next year and see that they're doing the Rocket Face as a HasLab.
Welcome to the Chugcratic Seminar. I am your host and Dean of the School of Athenia, Kit Catastrophe. Tonight we have something very special in store for you, so climb on up to the box office. I'll punch your ticket and we can move right along to the concession stand because I'm joined by my three hosts, the Dean of the School of the Dean of Critique, Rune.
College movie night, everybody.
The Dean of the Arts, ID Armed.
That's me.
And the Dean of Fabrication, definitely not Char.
I'm glad you pronounced it right. Everyone gets it wrong.
So, as a quick primer, we will be discussing the hot new movie of the year, Transformers 1. Have y'all seen it?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have come here if I hadn't seen it. I managed to see it in the theater this week, and it was a bit hard because no one's showing it anymore. And unfortunately, when I did go to see it, or perhaps fortunately, I was like the only guy in the theater as well.
Yeah, bad omen.
Mm-hmm.
I myself have seen the movie twice now. I watched it about a month and a half ago when it came out in theaters, and I saw it once again when it became free on streaming on Paramount Plus. Thank God, just in time for this episode. I was worried I'd have to spend money before it came out on Blu-ray.
I saw it the week it dropped. No, the week before it dropped. They had a crap ton of early screenings up in Michigan and I think nationwide actually. And then I watched it with friends through totally legal means. Trust me, it was extremely legal.
We know you support the official release. Don't worry.
I mean, I did give them my money to see it the first time, so you are technically right.
Brimstone, what about you? Where'd you go see it?
I saw it in the theaters a few weeks ago. Funnily enough, it was actually on the same day in which we did the last episode of the Chugcratic Seminar.
I forgot you guys over the pond had to wait like one whole month to see it unless you were like an influencer. Influencer I guess is the right word. And like they got to see it like months early. But like everyone else had to just wait it out, which is really silly.
Yeah. It was I don't know why they did that.
I don't know either, man.
I think it's fair to say though that regardless of our opinions on this film, Transformers 1 has had it a bit rough. And I don't just mean the poor marketing, because it's funny that Kit put in the video description to grace our cinemas because as has been established just now, as well as online, 1 was pulled from theaters not long after its release. It resulted in a lot of people, including a Twitter user known as TF Hype Guy, encouraging others to see it on the big screen while they still could, which I guess is a testament to how passionate a lot of fans are about 1. But despite the positive reception from critics and audiences alike, it's currently the lowest grossing of the Transformers movies released from 2007 onwards. Its budget was roughly $75 million. It made back roughly $129 million. In terms of home releases, Kit, I think you said that it's available on certain video-on-demand services.
Yes,
which is
Paramount. In the United States, it's on Paramount Plus, but it won't be on home release, like physical, until next month.
Yeah, it's so surreal because back in the 90s and 2000s, you had to wait around between 4 and 6 months for a movie to come out on video, DVD, etc. How times have changed.
Yeah.
To be fair, the turnaround time on that sort of thing is shorter even for the biggest of films, because Deadpool and Wolverine came out not too long ago on Blu-ray, and it only had it had a far longer like run in the theaters just because it did so well. But
Yeah,
it didn't come out that much earlier before TF1.
It made a
Came out like
measly
July,
like
didn't it?
$1 billion.
Yeah.
A measly $1 billion.
It was a good movie. I liked it.
I have not seen it. I don't really check in with Marvel that much anymore until like they make another Spider-Man movie. Then they got me because it's Spider-Man.
I liked it as well, but we're not here to review, but we're not here to review Deadpool today. So
Yeah, no cape shit. No cape shit.
Remember, no cape shit.
So, I hope everyone has gotten their popcorn and their candy and their soda pop. I know I have. Let's get to talking about this film. So, how should we go about starting this?
Well, okay. So by first impressions, are we talking like when that first trailer, the very first film trailer to be put in space? Are we talking about that, or like when the movie actually came out?
I mean, we can talk about the trailer.
Yeah, I feel like this would probably be the best place to talk about the trailer.
Yeah, I have 4 words to say before anyone else gets started. That trailer was dog shit.
Yeah, no,
You may proceed.
That's 5.
I can't.
Dog shit is one word. It's a compound.
Okay.
Dude, that trailer, like I haven't watched it in a minute because it's just a movie trailer, right? But like, what a
good Google.
What misintentional misdirecting? Because like, wow, that's like, I'm gonna be real. What I expected about that movie, because here's the thing, I never even saw the other trailers. I just watched that first trailer because I like going into movies blind aside from the first trailer, and like what I expected in that movie and what I got are like 2 completely different things. I feel like, I had a completely different idea for what this movie was gonna be about compared to the final thing, and I don't think that's a good thing if it's like a popcorn movie. You know what I mean? Like if it depends on the genre and stuff. But like this is a ostentatively, however you say that word, a family movie. I think you should give families an idea of what they're going into. And that first trailer did not really do that. I think even for like Transformer fans like ourselves, there's a lot of people. There's a reason a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that was butt, that was poop.
I feel like part of the problem was they kind of replicated what a lot of trailers are like for movies these days. But what they unintentionally did is they gave people the impression that this film would be like most films. It has people thought it was going to have myself included, thought it was going to have the typical the typical Joss Whedon style writing, he's behind me, isn't he? That's that kind of thing in the film.
Yeah, no, and again, when it comes to I'm like an armchair film guy. I'm not a Siskel or Ebert kind of guy or whatever, but yeah, I just think for a family film, you shouldn't of course spoil the movie, right? But like you should give people an idea of what they're gonna be spending their like $7 to $12 on, however much tickets cost these days, because I know for some people they're like stupid expensive.
It was like $10 to me.
I think it was really odd to make it look so jokey. I guess if that's
they entirely missold what the tone of the film was going to be like. I think.
Again, for context, my idea was I thought this movie was going to be like them looking for transformation cogs, and then they were going to fight the Quintessons, and Sentinel Prime was going to die somehow past the Matrix, something like that. But and of course there would be way more jokes than what was in the final movie. But like no, it was like the complete opposite. And again, I don't really think that's a great thing to do. Again, if this was like not more mature film, but I guess
I definitely got the vibe that this movie was going to be full of capital M, capital H Marvel humor.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking.
Especially with how they played up Bradacitron in the trailer. That when that first showed up, I was just like, oh my god, this movie's gonna blow. It's gonna blow hard. This movie is going to suck.
I mean, I can't necessarily blame you.
I swear to God, that first trailer just almost turned me off completely because I thought it was just going to be some stupid kids movie that has no real substance and it's just going to be silly the whole time. And don't get me wrong, it is silly, but like, like this movie is really good. We'll get into this later, but this movie's really good at compartmentalizing the silly. I just thought it was going to be like full of quips, full of just really bad jokes, but it wasn't until the second trailer that I started getting on board with this because the second trailer was so much better.
Again, I never seen it. I've never actually seen it at all.
Were it not for the second trailer, I probably wouldn't have seen it when I did.
I entirely checked out from the film. I did not like see the film until like one, a bunch of people said that it was actually good, and two, that I had to. We agreed we were going to watch it for the podcast. I was like, well, you know what? It's 10 quid. I might as well do it so I can have an opinion.
And that's fair. I think it was around like late summertime when like I think the word of mouth from like because again this movie got screened like a bajillion times everywhere. Like so many people were able to just go see it like 2 months early, 3 months early. I feel like it's early as. So like the word of mouth spread stupidly fast, and I think that's what kind of reassured a lot of Transformer fans about like, oh, this might actually be good. So I think more Transformer fans ultimately did see this movie just because of that really strong word of mouth. But I don't think something like that extended to the general audience. If we're talking about how well it did financially and whatnot. But
I think that's fair.
I mean, but what were your guys' first impressions about the movie?
Like actually seeing it?
Yeah.
I was very, very pleasantly surprised. It don't get me wrong, it's a very basic Transformers story, and a lot of it is stuff we've seen before in some form or other. I'm sounding like I'm shitting on it, but I just want to get it out of the way first. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what you're saying is fair.
Like I'm just tired of stuff like the 13, it's another origin story, stuff like that. But
I get it because again,
and like all the designs are like, they're really recognizable. They're almost evergreen in some capacity.
I get where you're coming from because again, we've been kind of rolling with the same kind of like base story since like 2010 at this point. I think it is tired, but
if this came out before everything else that it drew from, it would have blown me away. It's one of those situations.
But yeah, no, I get where you're coming from my point of view. Okay, when I came out of the movie, I thought it was pretty terrific, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still get where you're coming from, but I think what Josh Cooley and the rest of the writers and whatnot did a good job on was just playing with the established kind of lore of Transformers.
Yeah, this was definitely Yeah, this was definitely this is like the perfect way to get into Transformers. You don't need to know anything else. This movie doesn't like relate to any other Transformers continuity like per se, but like you can squint enough and it'll gel with just about anything else.
Yeah.
And
again, the thing I like is like I know, like you said, Kit, there's a lot of tried things in this movie, but again, the thing I stated earlier was like, oh yeah, this movie like plays around with them in new ways, but also I don't know how to explain it. You have to have seen the movie, but it doesn't feel like it's something ripped from like the Covenant of Primus or the Binder, all those like things from like the early 2010s that resulted in Prime. And
it's using nothing but like it doesn't really have any original concepts of its own, but it's using pre-existing concepts in a somewhat novel way.
Yeah, in a way that doesn't feel like the same because Do you know, walking out of that theater, do you know how happy I was that the Allspark wasn't mentioned once? Or even, like, think about it. How many times have we had, like, Optimus throw the Allspark into some, like, wormhole or something? Not even Optimus, but, like, you know, Prime in the Align Continuity did it. Cyberverse did it. War for Cybertron did it. I believe Earthspark does it. I think
the movie, and it started in the movies.
I think in IDW 2019, it's just like all out warders. I don't know if there's actually an Allspark involved, but like my point is just like, you know, I like the Allspark, but like the fact that it wasn't like a major, again, it wasn't even in the movie at all. It was like, oh, that felt good. Like, I liked that straight up.
I like this film a lot. I think Kit hit the nail on the head that it was a pleasant surprise, and like of the current like status quo for Transformers lore, this is probably the best telling of it, if you know what I mean.
I don't think it should become definitive by any means. Again, I'm one that believes that Transformers is best when it's reinventing itself, not like to like a critical level, but like when it wants to actively try new things, right? But I wouldn't mind seeing influences from this film like years down the line, you know?
Well, what I mean is like of the boilerplate story, what is considered the boilerplate origin for the Transformers. You know, Optimus Prime and Megatron were friends. They had a problem with Transformers with Cybertron Society, and they worked together, but then they had a disagreement. Yada yada yada. All that stuff of that status quo, of that like boilerplate story. I think this is probably the best execution of it. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I remember about 10 years ago when I was in like middle high school, can't remember at this point. This was basically the story I wanted to write, and this was the origin I wanted to write. And I don't think like especially when it comes to character dynamics between Optimus and Megatron, I don't think anyone could have done it better. But I'll save that for later because like I have a lot to say about this particular version of Megatron in a very good way.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's easy to say that he was like the highlight of the movie, like duh, you know?
Yeah.
Water's wide and the sky's blue.
So we keep mentioning how, you know, this is like the most stripped down, essential version of the Transformers origin story. Why don't we prime the audience on what that story actually is?
And I can be the one to do that. So Transformers 1 is an origin story set on Cybertron before the Autobot-Decepticon War, with focus on Optimus Prime and Megatron's former friendship. It's not the first Transformers media to do this, the biggest examples being various fiction tied to the Align continuity, including the Exodus novel and the Transformers Prime cartoon. Other works that have explored this general idea include the live-action films, Cyberverse, the Netflix trilogy, and that's not getting into the comics. But one is not linked to any of those. It's its own story, its own timeline. Despite the back and forth online regarding its connection to the live-action films, I mean, with what happens in it, we now know it can't possibly be linked to the Michael Bay movies, at least, right?
Hey, in all fairness, at least Lorenzo is actively saying it's its own thing. He's not claiming it's favors anything.
Well, anyway, to recap the premise, we have the godlike being Primus, who sacrificed his life force to become the planet Cybertron itself. His first creations were the 13 Primes. Not all of them are named in the film, though I think there's a trading card game that lists the whole roster.
Yes.
The power of an artifact called the Matrix of Leadership allowed Energon, the lifeblood of all Transformers, to flow through the planet from its core. By all accounts, it was a peaceful rule, until an alien race, the Quintessons, invaded Cybertron, resulting in a war that led to the death of the Primes and the loss of the Matrix. As a result, the Energon stopped flowing, and the Cybertronian populace now resides deep below the surface under the leadership of Sentinel Prime. We find out that the planet operates under a transformation-based caste system, which, yes, is very reminiscent of the Aligned Continuity, IDW's G1 comics, and potentially other media. Here, however, the lower class bots can't transform, period. They don't even have cogs. We'll get to why later. This underclass includes the miners, whose job it is to extract whatever usable energon there is left on the planet. Working in the mines are our two main leads, Optimus and Megatron, back when they were Orion Pax and D16. They're managed by Elita 1, and through various shenanigans they meet a bot who works in waste management, B127. Bonusatron! There, that's that done. The four bots end up venturing to the planet's surface, where they encounter various allies and enemies and learn the dark truth behind Cybertron's current state. These world-shattering revelations, combined with their different ideas on how to restore the planet, slowly but surely lead to the fallout of Orion and D16, turning them into the arch-enemies we've come to expect from the franchise.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
again, like hearing it, like imagining you're like a Transformer fan who like just happened to not know there was a new movie that came out. I feel like that would sound like tried and true formula, just like generic Transformers story. But I do think once you get into like the nitty gritty of the movie, that's where it really shines. I don't think the base story is bad. I think the base story is great, but it's like it's accentuated by like what's.
I actually have a couple nitpicks about like the main story. Would this be the appropriate place to talk about them?
I don't see why not.
So I have a couple nitpicks / plot holes, and the biggest one comes from like how long ago was the Quintesson War? How long ago was
they said the primes have been dead for 50 cycles, which I assume is a solar year.
Yeah. So 1 year. But that what leads to my confusion is so the Quintesson War is portrayed as like less than a lifetime ago. You say it's like 1 solar year. Maybe it is. I don't know.
I mean, we don't know how long it takes Cybertron to orbit its sun, so
yeah.
I thought 50 cycles meant basically 50 Earth years in this case.
I mean, you could assume that, but
yeah.
I assume it to be like Cybertron years, because why would they know about Earth?
Well, yeah, but we're assuming that Cybertron has a similar solar cycle that we do. But the specific time isn't my question. Or what comes into contention. What my issue is that the Quintesson War, I think we can agree, is portrayed as being within a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah, probably about as far away from them as like the World Wars were when we were kids.
Maybe not even that. Maybe even Vietnam, because like we see that all the major players are still well within their natural lifespans. You know.
Yeah.
Specifically, the High Guard. The High Guard, who were the elite soldiers of the war on the Cybertronian side. I'm sorry, have been out in the wilderness for this amount of time. They still appear to be, in relatively good shape. They don't seem to be approaching the end of their natural lifespans. And of course, these guys would eventually go on to become the Decepticons. So we know they're very much well within their natural lifespans. But that's not the inherent issue. The inherent issue is how was Sentinel able to convince an entire society that cogless bots just always existed when it would be within living memory that bots would know?
He could have said it had something to do with the Matrix disappearing.
Well, that was one of my suggested fixes, that it could have been linked to the disappearance of the Matrix. That with the disappearance of the Matrix, that bots would now be created without TCOGs. But that's never brought up. In fact, it's explicitly said, or it's said that it's implied that our main cast thinks that cogless bots have just always been a thing, because they're surprised when Alpha Trion doesn't. They're surprised when Alpha Trion doesn't know about Cogless bots. When it would make sense for Alpha Trion to not know about Cogless bots if they only started happening after the Matrix of Leadership disappeared in their worldview, because he went offline before the Matrix of Leadership disappeared. That wouldn't be as world shattering to them. So it's one of those things that, to me, I felt like could have been reworked slightly, maybe with a second pass. I feel like two of the ways they could have done it is they could have done it the way that you just suggested, Kit, where they made the histories, the legend be that the Cogless bots came into existence when the Matrix of Leadership disappeared, and then later on in the movie, perhaps when Sentinel is gloating to Megatron in the third act, that's when he reveals that he is responsible for the missing T-Cogs instead of the disappearance of the Matrix of Leadership. Or perhaps they could include as part of the history that when Sentinel Prime betrayed the Primes, he could have also carried out some sort of mass cull of the Cybertronian population, maybe through sending them into a big battle with the Quintessons, which is portrayed as this big heroic final stand, and that's why the Quintessons aren't invading anymore, or something like that. And it killed off the mass majority of the Cybertronian population, so that Sentinel was able to rebuild and basically give his version of history, which would allow for this deception. That's one way they could have done it. And it probably would have cemented his role as the villain as well, because now he's not just killed the Primes, he's killed basically all the Cybertronians before the war, or is responsible for their deaths.
I don't disagree, but I don't think the way they handled it in the movie we got is particularly bad. Because I mean, like, didn't you suggest that Alpha Trion knew that Sentinel did this?
Well, no, I suggested that Sentinel not knowing about Cogless bots would not conflict with the worldview that they'd already been presented, because he went offline before Cogless bots became a thing.
I see.
It doesn't ruin the film or anything, but it is a plot hole that kind of that I noticed, and I think it is something that could have been addressed with minor tweaking of the film.
Minor.
Minors.
This sort of thing, I guess, is kind of a recurring thing for me with this film, because there are moments that aren't necessarily plot holes if they're not explained, but it would have been nice if they were addressed in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Another one that sort of gets to me, this one is okay, I get that they didn't have to explain it. This one, but I would have liked if there was some kind of explanation, is how were they actually able to amputate the cogs of what it would have been a large proportion of a newborn population of Cybertronians in complete secrecy?
I mean, Sentinel does have a pretty large contingent of troops that accompany him to his rendezvous with the Quintessons, so it's not entirely out of the question that he has another cadre of surgical bots that are sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, it could be that. Because
it's not like he's going out and to bring Energon to the Quintessons in secret. Because I mean, Arachnid's there, and he's got I don't know, a couple dozen troops. Probably pays them well.
Well, they're part of his inner sanctum. My assumption was that they were sort of in on it from the beginning. Those troops.
That's a good way to look at it.
Those the guys who have been there since day one. They were we're we're going to back Sentinel so we can live in luxury effectively. That's what I imagine.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's other explanations.
Of course, it's also sort of unexplained why Sentinel would go through the trouble of removing these T-cogs from everyone when it's not particularly necessary to make sure that all the miners can't transform. I guess it's just to reinforce a social caste system, but I mean, ooh, it looks like definitely not Char has dropped out of the show. But like I was saying, it's not entirely clear why he went through the trouble of doing it, other than to further Megatron's radicalization for the purpose of the story.
I mean, I can see the logic of it. You want to create an underclass effectively that's less capable of fighting back. I can see the motivation for that. I think that is somewhat logical.
I guess so.
If you don't mind, I do actually want to talk a little bit about this caste system, because I brought up prior that this is not the first Transformers media to feature Cybertron operating under a caste system in the pre-war era. However, in the likes of the Aligned Continuity and IDW's G1 comics, the latter of which I believe refers to it as functionism.
Functionism.
Yeah. In that version of events, a Cybertronian's path in life is determined by what they transform into. You're born with a specific type of alternate mode. You're stuck with that job. You're stuck with a job tied to said alt mode forever. In this film, it's simply a case of can or can't you transform? If not, you're at the bottom of the social hierarchy. And out of interest, I created a poll on both Twitter and YouTube asking people which caste system is more effective at demonstrating inequality on Cybertron, and grouping the results from both platforms, it turns out the alt mode caste system actually won out. I got some YouTube comments expanding on this, with one saying the first one, as in the alt mode caste system, is better. Presumably they mean from a narrative standpoint, since it's more illogical and irrational, like actual caste systems. Not to mention, I'd like all the Transformers to be able to, transform. They later expand on this, saying that because there's less of a tangible difference between a tank robot and a jet robot versus a tank robot versus a non-transforming robot, they seem more obviously mechanically equal, and unequal societal value seems more wrong. And I get their point, because as transformation is the defining biological trait of most Cybertronians, it makes sense as to why those that transform wouldn't be viewed. It makes sense as to why those that can't transform would be viewed as lesser than those who can. There is a logic to the system, an incredibly toxic and scummy logic, but a logic nonetheless. And
I actually have a disagreement there. I like functionalism from a narrative perspective more as well, but I actually I think it works better for the opposite reason, and that being that from a perspective of internal logic, functionalism kind of makes sense for a quote unquote backward Cybertronian society, because you can imagine the logic of Primus made all Transformers with a specific alt mode, that alt mode relating to their purpose, thus you have an alt mode that determines your path in life. Like it makes sense from it makes internal sense, in my opinion, more so than or not more so, but it makes sense in my opinion, and it works, I suppose, from a hypothetical society perspective. Not saying it's a good society, just saying it sort of makes sense in my opinion more. Everyone has a pardon?
You say the almonds that Primus gives them. Does that count the constructed cold bots who were built as opposed to being born from the metal surface of the planet?
Well, I suppose that's where the contradictions in the system come in, and that's where the narrative interest comes in. But I suppose, from the logic of the system, yes, that would still be Primus endowing you with an alt mode through fate instead of literally endowing you with an alt mode because you're forged.
I mean, that wasn't the only comment I got. I can read out the other two. One of them says, honestly, the first approach is better from a logical standpoint as it leaves more room for diverse handlings of a caste system. Plus, the first idea can actually give birth to those who would reject their ability to transform, becoming monoformers. And there's also a lot more discrimination between the near-infinite alt modes transformers can take, like how those with bestial alt modes are seen as lesser compared to those with vehicle alt modes, and those beast formers not trusting those with vehicular alt modes, etc., etc. And then we have another person who responded saying, plus the casual hypocrisy, two-tier laws, and the rules for thee but not for me mentality coming from those higher up on the social ladder, depending on their family connections. A proper way to use real-world topics to inform characters like Megatron, who sees blatant favoritism or bias on display from those who are supposed to abide by the caste system and follow its rules, but don't, and they see what a sham it all is. Who's to say Senator Ratbat wasn't a beast former this entire time, but brought his way into concealing his nature? Functionalism is a great idea by James Roberts. As much as I love to criticize him, it just needs a really great writer to really explore it more thoroughly. So that's basically the feedback I got.
Yeah, I'd say I agree with that.
I mean, at the end of the day, both caste systems are destructive by design. You can call one's take a simplification, but I still think it works for the story they're telling.
I mean, it works. The cog system, in my opinion, works from what Sentinel was going for. Because even if you had a functionalist system, you would still have a smaller proportion of the society that would turn into mining vehicles or whatever to be miners, as opposed to you can just make someone cogless by taking out their cog, and now you have a new miner. So it's more logical from Sentinel's perspective to do the cogless caste system, because you can make a larger proportion of the population cogless, so that you can have more miners to mine.
And they'd be more flexible in what kind of jobs they can do, because as we see, Alita gets demoted from mining supervisor to trash man,
waste management.
Yeah, garbage day.
And also you have Badassatron doing material disposal as well. So it's clear that it's not just mining that they do. It's sort of like
I have a little theory. Theory. I don't think there's anyone else who does the job Badassatron does. I think they just put him down there to get rid of him. I don't think that's an actual job. I don't think anyone else is doing that.
That might also be the case.
Yeah.
In fact, that's somewhat likely given the implications of the writing.
So what shall we talk about next, gentlemen?
Well, I had one more nitpick, I suppose, but we can save that for the character section because it's more related to the ideology of characters, really.
All right. I kind of forgot that we had that slide, but that is the perfect topic to talk about.
Well, I mean, like anything else about the story, like the pacing?
I thought the pacing was actually brilliant. When I was watching it in the comfort of my own home a couple nights ago, I was just like, I had to go to the bathroom at one point, and I still felt like I had like a ton of movie left to go through, but I clicked pause, and I was like over halfway done with the film. It's a very brisk film, and the scenes never really outstay their welcome. I don't think anything ever takes too long, and conversely, I don't think anything should have been expanded, except maybe the very ending.
Yeah, I feel like the third act was a little rushed. I would have liked to see more. I would have liked to see more interaction between Orion Pax and D16 before his final turn.
Yeah, I think maybe 5 more minutes could have done all the difference. You know, just that little extra bit more. Because it was pretty pretty fast. Like they immediately expose Sentinel. Megatron kills him within like 2 minutes, and then Optimus gets mortally injured and he falls to the core. And Megatron starts his uprising, and then boom, Optimus Prime is the Matrix, and he's back, and they start fighting all within like 5 minutes. Could have just spaced that out just a little bit.
Yeah. I feel like also there's a little bit of dissonance. I'm not sure, maybe this is intentional, but I feel like there's a little bit of dissonance between how Megatron is portrayed at the end of the film and also the fact that pretty much all of the guys who followed him were members of the High Guard.
Well, I'm not so sure about that because one of the miners in the background shot was Barricade.
He got his token miner.
Yeah, he got his DEI higher.
What does it stand for here? Decepticon Entry Inspector.
Decepticon.
Decepticon Employment Institute. Let's move on.
No, hang on. Yeah, ID is back now. Would you like to give your thoughts on the story?
This kind of goes back to my first impressions, where I do feel like, again, it's very tried and true formula for Transformers. Maybe not try. No, tried's maybe an understatement. It's been tried a lot, but I think we're talking just like the general story beats. Number one, it goes by really fast, especially kind of after they meet B-127. They're like, all right, let's go find the Matrix and stuff, right? But I think, again, what I really like is kind of like the twists and turns, and I think my favorite thing about the story is kind of how the past feels like it's actually like it matters, in the sense that like one thing I really like about the story, I don't even think this is like a character thing. I think it's more of a story thing. Is I like how tangible the Primes are. This is the first time where I think you care for the 13 Primes as a group and not just one that shows up in some random piece of fiction every couple of years. I just like how there's like consequences for like actions that happen in the past, and like you know how Sentinel rises to power himself, and I do really like. I like how there's like a chain of events that like kind of continue. I like that there's proper storytelling. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
like there's a proper like cause and effect that with everything. Like, oh, this is how this happens and whatnot.
Is there a bin lorry outside someone's house?
Yeah. Can't do much about that. I'm sorry.
ID, since you brought up the Primes, I actually wish to touch on them myself, because I know the three of you aren't particularly into the concept of the 13 Primes to begin with, but whether you are or not, part of me feels that the Primes were kind of underdeveloped. Like, now, I mean, you could argue that this leaves room for them to be explored down the line. It serves as a hook, a means for audiences to stick around for a sequel if it happens, and that is a big if at this point. But it doesn't really change that in the film, the only ones who get any real focus are Alpha Trion and Megatronus. Alpha Trion, of course, recounts the events that led to the Prime's defeat, and it makes sense that the writer picked him for that, as Alpha Trion is often depicted as a records keeper of sorts. Meanwhile, Megatronus is idolized as a mighty warrior who, as far as we know, didn't betray his brethren and become the Fallen in this version of events. Instead, his visage and transformation cog are used by bots who themselves have fallen to darkness. Otherwise, the Primes are more of a footnote in this film, and it's especially unclear if some of them even have the abilities we've come to expect from various depictions of those characters. Solus Prime and her powers of creation, Vector Prime, the guardian of time and space, Amalgamous Prime and his constant shape-shifting. Based on his artwork, Wan's Nexus Prime doesn't even look like a combiner.
Yeah, he's just a guy.
Yeah, but
Not to mention, sorry, Idea, just to finish this off.
no, you're
Not to
fine.
mention, are mini-cons a thing in this universe? Because we have Micronus Prime. Do you know what else? Do you know who we also have? Quintus Prime. Who in
That's
other
the big
stories-
one.
Yeah, that's
the
weird
one where like if a sequel happens, you gotta talk about him. But like, I'm
Yeah.
personally of the notion that the Primes don't have to be like crazy demigods. I think it's kind of okay if they're just normal guys, but they happen to be the first guys that Primus spawned or however Transformer reproduction works. I don't want to get into that, man. But I still get where you're coming because if we're talking, I know we're talking about the story, but if we're talking designs, I like some of the designs actually. You know, like I want a toy of Amalgamous so bad. I want a YOLO Parker thing. Give me a Blockies. Give me a Chug down the line. Probably not a Chug actually. That probably won't happen.
Here.
I've got there's something else like yes, Quintus Prime is a thing who in other stories created the Quintessons, which we can only assume is the case here. Again, this is another thing that's neither it's not really confirmed or addressed, even if we can put the pieces together ourselves. And it doesn't help that Orion encounters the spirits of all the Primes, basically confirming that they're all dead. I can only speculate that in a future story, it's revealed that Optimus has the ability to communicate with the Primes through the Matrix of Leadership. Also, just to bring this up, Transformers 1 scraps the concept of the Prime named 13 or the 13th, which, long story short, for those who don't know, is a version of Optimus Prime that gave up his divinity and is reincarnated as a regular Cybertronian, Orion Pax, who goes back to being Optimus Prime down the line. Instead, for this movie, we get Zeta Prime, a name first seen in IDW's comics, who is also the first Matrix bearer, not Primer. It's weird.
Even weirder is that you realize that Optimus Prime is the second Matrix bearer, if you think about it. Because Sentinel never had it.
Yeah. It's kind of... It was funny when I heard the name Zeta. I thought the guy from the Cybertron games. Even though apparently he's from IDW, I didn't actually know that.
I think they came out around the same time.
Well, it's a kind of a mess because you have Zeta Prime from IDW's comics, and then from the War for Cybertron video game, you have a bot who, in the tie-in comics is called Sentinel, but in the game itself is called Zeta, and they, of course, ended up calling him Sentinel Zeta Prime.
That's a name almost as bad as Megatronus Prime.
Yeah, I can't really defend that name and a bunch of others that have us at the end. It's like you said with Iaconus last episode, Kit. It's just them tacking on a Latin-sounding suffix at the end to sound more fancy.
And it's also just coming from them trying to shoehorn in, Megatron named himself after little Robo Satan. Oh, isn't that edgy? But like Beast Wars already did that, and they did it better because in G1 Megatron was just a guy who was named Megatron the entire time, and Beast Wars Megatron was just a big fanboy of him.
Yeah, we've discussed this before, but me and Kit,
we discussed it many times because it pisses me off.
It would probably just make more sense if the Fallen was just called Megatron originally, and Megatron, our Megatron, the Megatron, called himself Megatron after Megatron, and then Beast Wars Megatron called himself Megatron after both Megatron and Megatron. Megatron. Indeed.
The one thing I will say, shifting gears for a moment, is that I do kind of like how, the Quintessons are a threat, but they're not the main threat of this film. It's like they're saving it for, again, a sequel. If that happens, knock on wood.
The ending especially felt like a sequel hook. Especially the after credits scene, which was very cool, and I have seen used in like many a funk edit now.
Speaking of shoehorn names, can we get over this whole the auto and Autobot means autonomy? Fuck off.
Wait, was that? No, I mean that kind of was a thing.
Didn't that come from TF1? I've never heard that before.
Well, I mean, in Transformers 2007, Optimus goes, "We are autonomous robotic organisms from the planet Cybertron," and Ratchet says, "You can call us Autobots for short." And then in TF1, Optimus is like, "Freedom and autonomy is the right of all sentient beings. We are Autobots."
No, the auto stands for automobile, and that is how it will always be.
Yeah.
I think in the context of the film, I think it's fair, but I get where you guys are coming from still.
Yeah, this is just a meta complaint on my part.
Yeah. It's
no, it works in universe.
You know,
I'm just tired of Hasbro trying to be cheeky about it. You know,
there's one thing that brings. I don't think there's. If like autonomy is what equates to a Cybertronian or a Transformer being an Autobot, then I kind of wish there was, if at the very least, there was something like that for the Decepticons. You know what I mean, right? Like just to even it out. At least
I mean, they sort of did that. Megatron was like, "We will never be deceived again.
Oh,
we are the Decepticons."
Right. Okay, so there wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a really weak way to name it.
Yeah.
Like they're literally just calling themselves the "Fool Me Once, Shame on You; Fool Me Twice, Shame on Me"trons.
I like the idea of Decepticon being an epithet that Autobots use for them. Like they're called Decepticons because you're a bunch of fucking liars. That's why you're Decepticons.
Yeah.
That I don't know. I feel like that makes a little bit more sense. And the Decepticons were just like, you know what? That's a cool sounding name. We're just going to use it. It's happened in history before. That's all I'm going to say.
For if speaking the truth is deception, then we are gladly guilty.
Ooh, that's good. Can I get a little pretentious? Am I allowed to get a little pretentious?
You are Dean.
All right. So something I noticed in this film that I don't think's been talked about is this film's plot is kind of feels like a medieval play almost, like the plot line of it. One could even call it Shakespearean. And before you accuse me of having my head up my ass, I will explain why. It really feels like this whole film has one of the central like conflicts of the film is the idea of the divine right of kings. Specifically that one of the big reason that Cybertron is fucked up is because Sentinel Prime is not worthy. He's not chosen by Primus to lead Cybertron as Zeta was, because Zeta was specifically chosen by Primus to be the leader, the prime of primes, and that is a thing that can arguably be seen as taken from very classical plays, like Shakespeare.
I mean, I can think of a very direct comparison to The Lion King, which is allegedly based on Hamlet.
Yeah, no, as you were talking about this, I was like, oh, Macbeth. Yeah,
I was going to bring up Macbeth. One can argue that Sentinel Prime in this film occupies a similar role to Macbeth in Macbeth. He is the illegitimate king. He achieved his role as the king through treachery. Of course, in the original play, Macbeth kills King Duncan, and in this film, Sentinel Prime kills Zeta Prime in order to take his role. And then in the end of the film, Optimus Prime is literally ordained by God to lead the Autobots. Or rather ordained by Primus, but regardless, he is ordained by what is effectively the god of Transformers to lead Cybertron and be its legitimate ruler. I don't know how much more explicit you can get, you know.
Are we chosen by heaven?
Are we coming to the great?
Say my name when you pray.
Is half of this movie just like Robo Macbeth or Macbeth, however you say it?
More like Robo Hamlet, but yeah, kinda.
I'll take your word. I never read.
Yeah, because like, okay, so I never read Hamlet, but I did watch The Lion King, and when Mufasa was king, everything was great, everything was grand, and then he was killed by Scar, and then there was a big drought because he was evil, and then Simba, the rightful heir, killed Scar and took the throne, and everything was great and grand again.
Well, yeah, that's the idea of it's sort of the idea of the legitimacy, the idea of the bastard king. In the literal sense of a bastard, because
Scar wasn't a bastard; he was just
in the original Hamlet, I believe it is that the usurper, whose name I forget, someone
I think it's Claudius,
maybe, but he is if I remember correctly, he is the illegitimate half brother of the king, so he can't ascend to the throne legitimately. So he kills the king in order to claim his place. And this relates, this obviously bastards aren't really a thing on Cybertron, but Sentinel is still the illegitimate ruler because he isn't chosen by Primus.
I mean, you can call him a bastard if you want to.
He's a bastard in the modern phrasing. Sense. Yeah, in the colloquial sense, he's a bastard.
Zeta TF says that the movie reminded him of Ben-Hur. I've never read that or seen any of its adaptations, but I will appreciate that both works have a kick-ass race.
Yeah. I have not seen that film either, though I guess that's going on my list.
Yeah. I was getting a very Greek tragedy vibe from it, but I couldn't think of anything I could really compare it to. So I will concede the point to you that it is far more Shakespearean than it is Greek.
Yeah, I can't really consider it a tragedy. Well, no, I can consider it a tragedy because of Megatron's arc, but Sentinel I wouldn't say is a tragedy necessarily because he's never portrayed in the film as having been good at one point and corrupted by his own desires or something like that. He's always, power hungry and wanting to live this, this luxurious lifestyle. But we never see him in a state before the betrayal. So maybe there'll be a prequel for the prequel.
Transformers -1, Transformers 0,
Transformers 0.5.
But we are getting to sort of in-depth character discussions, so I'll at least move to the next slide.
Right.
We don't have to go through all of these in order, but
well, who do we want to talk about first? Who has the most to say about whom?
I'll start by talking about Optimus Prime / Orion Pax himself. Because a common criticism of several Optimus Primes is that they're very stoic, letting little emotion show. And they do tie it into things like the weight of the war / burden of leadership wearing down on them. Consequently, they're often considered pretty flat and boring as a result. Earthspark, and from the looks of things, Skybound's comics have shown that they don't need to explore his pre-war life to avoid that problem. With that being said, Transformers 1's Orion Pax does showcase quite a bit of personality. He's ultimately kind-hearted, as we would expect, and he does what he does for the greater good of all Cybertronians, but he's also rebellious and quite the smart-ass, wouldn't you say?
He is a shithead. He's always getting into some kind of trouble. He is.
He's a young guy. He's he wants to. He's not doing it to be some kind of delinquent. He's doing it because it's like he wants to learn about things. He
wants to live.
He's a lovable rogue in the beginning of the film.
And again, it's honestly
a scamp.
It feels like the biggest departure for Optimus since like animated. I feel kind of like usually, or if we're talking just Orion Pax is usually just like a reserved guy he's looking to like change Cybertron for the better, but like on a grander scale. Since nowadays he starts off as like in the movies he's like a big military guy or Knight of Cybertron or whatever's going on in the movies. Prime and stuff. He's an archivist, but like here he's just a lowly miner. So yeah, he has grand visions, but like I guess he is starting small, or like he's working with what he's got. So like he's kind of endearing in that way, and I really like that. And then, but by the end of the movie, you're like, oh yeah, that's Optimus, all right. But like in a way that feels rewarded, because
I actually feel like this Orion Pax is a return to form. Specifically to the original Orion Pax betrayal.
Wardon?
No, Orion Pax from the G1 cartoon.
Yeah, in the episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Wardon. Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said Wardan. I was like, what?
No, you're fine.
No. This, to me, feels like the closest we've gotten to the original Wardon Orion Pax. In the, he has a very low-down job. He's very low in society to begin with, and he has this sort of optimistic streak in him. This very trusting streak, as we remember in the episode War Dawn. His undoing is trusting Megatron too much and being betrayed by him. But I feel like at least character wise, he is the closest to the original of the Orion Paxes we've gotten so far.
No, that's actually a really great way to, oh my gosh, that's a great way to go about describing it. It feels like a nice reinvention and expansion of Wardon Orion Pax. If you didn't get gunned down like 5 minutes in. 5 minutes. That's nice.
One thing I do like is how Pax's rebellious nature is presented as both a positive and a negative. Positive in that, like I said, he makes decisions for what he believes to be for the benefit of other Cybertronians, not strictly himself. There's the scene where he breaks protocol to rescue Jazz from a collapsing mine. Then there's bringing D16 along to partake in the Iacon race to prove that the Cogless bots can do more than they're given credit for. With that said, they do address that, as well-intentioned as Pax may be, he's still incredibly reckless in how he goes about these things and doesn't consider the potential consequences. Something that Elita 1 and especially D16 call him out on. Like, D's rant to Orion when they're in the cave, that's the moment where their friendship starts to crack and marks the beginning of D's downward spiral. Yet at the same time, D isn't 100% wrong when he insinuates that Pax is selfish, because Pax's stunt to save Jazz nearly caused the deaths or entrapment of both them and D, and resulted in Elita getting fired. Second, given the intensity and obstacles of the Iacon race, Pax and D16 could very well have ended up getting killed in the chaos. Not to mention the implication that Pax basically tricked D into coming along at all, claiming that they were merely spectating, probably because he knew full well that D would not agree to tag along at all. And in traveling to the surface to find the Matrix, they almost get obliterated by a Quintesson ship. D's rant is what ultimately kickstarts Pax's own character growth, with some help from Elita's motivational speech. And this growth is showcased when Pax returns to the miners with his transformation cog. In his speech, Pax brings himself down a peg by kneeling down as a courtesy, as well as acknowledging his own flaws, claiming he was never the most focused miner. He echoes Alpha Trion's sentiment of how a transformer is not defined by the cog within their chest, but the spark that resides within their core, as a way of affirming the value of the miners, just as Trion did to the four of them earlier in the film. And most importantly, Pax does something that truly cements him as a far more worthy leader than Sentinel could ever hope to be. He offers the miners an actual choice: to work themselves to death or to fight back against Sentinel. And despite their initial doubts, they ultimately choose to fight alongside Pax, cheering him on as his speech ends. Pax could have easily said, "We've got to stand up to this injustice," and left it there. But instead, he allows them to decide their own fates, which, if that isn't what Optimus Prime is about, I don't know what is.
Yeah, in the first half of the film, I definitely got the vibe that Orion Pax was the kind of guy who just threw all caution to the wind and let himself just keep failing upwards, and he kept getting rewarded for it. And I think I came into this stream thinking that Megatron's about face, when it came to his to his feelings about Optimus, was a bit too sudden. But thinking about it as you were talking, like I could really see how his very flippant attitude towards consequences would really drive some resentment in Megatron, and that resentment would come to a head when he finds that Optimus bears the Matrix now, and like his irrational hatred of his former best friend makes a lot more sense to me once I've taken that into account.
Again, that's what I'm talking about. Like, kind of actions have consequences in this film, and I do think it's very understandable.
Because
every antic Orion pulls in like that first half of the movie gets someone fired. It almost kills. I mean, it wasn't really Orion Pax's fault for the jazz thing, but like still, more lives could have been at stake. It's why they're in sub-level 50 sub-level 50 with crazy B-127 and his friends. And
well, in fairness, that was more so because of Darkwing.
Yeah, but yeah, no, actually, a lot of people have talked about the Darkwing thing, if like Sentinel set them up or not. I really don't know. Still,
I think it's ambiguous.
Yeah, it's pretty ambiguous, and ultimately, it kind of doesn't matter, I guess. But like,
I mean, I can kind of agree with your guys with like how you guys are seeing Megatron's feelings towards Optimus kind of stewing, but at the same time, it almost feels like at every point in the film, Optimus does something stupid. D16's like, no, that's stupid, and then it turns out in their favor, and D16 is like, oh, that was actually cool, and I don't know. I
guess, but like there's always the very high likelihood of whatever Optimus wants to do failing and blowing up in their face. And the couple things that Runestone mentioned about Optimus's character actually getting on like a path towards growth, Megatron wasn't there for that. He wasn't there to see Alita's pep talk. He wasn't there to see Optimus basically debase himself in front of the miners to earn their loyalty. All he saw was this flippant guy who always kept getting them into trouble, suddenly being rewarded by God himself with the magic MacGuffin that'll bring life back to Cybertron. When Megatron was when he was the one, Megatron, I mean, was the one to finally end Sentinel's reign. So there's definite. I think there's definitely more room to explore his resentment, but I really think that's the crux of why he hates Optimus.
That's fair. Actually, on the topic of Optimus Prime's like transformation, something I was thinking about is in the cinema when I was watching the film and we were on that scene, I was actually on Megatron's side when he was about to kill Sentinel, because realistically he is entirely beyond redemption or any kind of rehabilitation. You're not going to get Sentinel on a redemption arc.
Yeah. Sentinel's basically on the level of Mussolini and Ceausescu here.
Yeah, he's not going to.
Actually, the Ceausescu comparison is pretty apt, considering what Romania did to their childcare system.
Ooh. But like from that perspective, I was with Megatron there. I was like, yeah, like you can't. This guy, you can't have, you can't let him live, really. Just logically, you can't. It's not like he was the guy at the top of the previous power system. even from a realpolitik system in this kind of situation, you kind of have to kill him. But what I realized was Optimus Prime wasn't sacrificing himself to save Sentinel, I don't think. I think he was sacrificing himself to try and save Megatron. Specifically because he predicted, rightly so, that Megatron killing Sentinel was his point of no return, was going to become his point of no return. That was where he was going to finally be stuck on the path that he's going. Specifically because, and this is going into Megatron's character now a bit, but I think the reason Megatron really wanted to kill Sentinel himself was specifically for the catharsis of killing Sentinel himself. It wasn't just that Sentinel needs to be killed or needs to be dethroned or whatever.
Yeah, he needed to be killed by him.
Yeah, Megatron wanted the catharsis of killing. And Sentinel realized that that was going to break him. Break his morality. It was going to entirely skew him for forever, pretty much. Entirely reframe his worldview.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of Megatron, Megatron was by far my favorite character in this entire film, and this particular Megatron was by far my favorite interpretation of the character in any Transformers media. Obviously Orion Pax is the hero of the story, but I thought Megatron's journey and his fall from grace was far more riveting because for the entire first half of the movie, I was just thinking, okay, yeah, this is a pretty all right film. And then we get to the scene in the cave after we find out the truth about Sentinel, and that's when I figured out that this movie was actually something really special, because the moment when Orion Pax asks, don't you want to figure out a way to stop him? And Megatron says, no, I want to kill him. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my limbs when I heard him go on that rant, and my blood was pumping, and I was like, yes, I want to see Megatron get what he wants here. I want to see that. That would be a very satisfying story progression, I guess. And we did. We got to see Megatron get exactly what he wanted, and we got to see what he lost because of it. And I think that's the best way to handle a revenge story like that. Especially when it's not the protagonist story. I mean, he is a protagonist, but he's not the main character like Optimus is.
He's not the hero.
He's not the hero. So we get to see him succumb to his primal urge for revenge, and we get to see exactly what that cost was. And I loved that. I love that they went there. It's exactly what we needed for a Megatron.
The one problem I have with Megatron's arc is I feel like it was a little bit, I don't know. I feel like him becoming the way he is with the High Guard, accepting the High Guard's way of thinking, I feel like happened a little too fast. He pretty much just beats up Starscream, and everyone's like, yo, go, D16's the leader now. We're going to follow him.
I get where you're coming from. It happened fast, but I think it's usually kind of a very G1 thing where the Decepticons are very, what is it? Might makes right, yeah. I guess
the way Starscream puts it is the strength of one bot over another. That's not the problem that I have, though. The problem I have is more so just I would have liked to see Megatron's progression be a little more gradual, I suppose. But
his progression was a bit more stair step than I would have liked. I would have liked an incline or a curve, but it's just sort of like steps.
Yeah, it's like Megatron meets the High Guard, he agrees with the High Guard, he gets kidnapped, and then we go into the third act.
Yeah, that's when his eyes turn orange instead of yellow.
Yeah. I would have liked more time. Maybe more scenes in the third act where Megatron's with the High Guard and he's in charge of the High Guard, and he sort of realizes the value of his new ideology, you know?
No, that's fair. I think my point of view on it is, again, well, number one, an hour 40-minute film, right? So there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, that's the concession I'm making.
But my POV is like, I think he wanted to make as much change as Orion did, but he was always much more reserved about it. He was like, "Oh, there's nothing I can do on cogless. You know, he's got no cog, right?" And then when he gets one of the Primus cogs from Alpha Trion, he's like, "Oh, I can do something now." And considering his feelings towards Sentinel Prime, I think that's when the spiral starts, like right then and there. You know, like I think he always wanted power in some shape or form, but he had to accept that he, as a cogless miner, there isn't so much he can do now with a cog.
I mean, I do like the sort of hints that they have in the like when he just gets the cog, and he's the first one to like just fucking kill a guy with his tank mode.
He just destroyed eviscerated guy.
Yeah,
like, I appreciate that.
Yeah, like when they've acquired their transformation cogs, and Alpha Trion says the line, "How you use that power is up to you." Look at Megatron's expression as he's saying that line. Like you can tell he wants to fuck someone over.
Yeah. So, Char, when you brought up that Optimus tried to sacrifice himself not to save Sentinel, but to save Megatron, that actually sort of solves a complaint I had with a scene pretty much right before that, where Optimus. So, like Optimus, when he's trying to spare Sentinel, he's just like, "No, you can't do that. You'll be just as bad as him." And like the scene before that, Badassatron was slicing up some mooks, and like they were both laughing about it. Like, I guess Orion Pax had like a rules of engagement sort of mind frame where like they were like some of these mooks were gonna die because that's just the nature of armed conflict. And he knew Badassatron wouldn't like relish it outside of the adrenaline rush of actually being able to do stuff with his knife hands, whereas with Megatron he'd be like, "Oh, you can't get this I can't let you get this catharsis. I have to do something to stop it, or else it's like Bay vs. Optimus said, you'll never stop at one."
Yeah. Also, maybe to a lesser extent, I feel like this helps is Optimus wasn't really as invested in Badassatron as a person.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Are we seriously doing this fucking running gag?
I don't.
Yeah, you're just calling him by his name.
yeah, that's his name.
I just kept forgetting that he didn't get the name Bumblebee in the film yet.
Yeah,
not other than once, which was still really weird. But okay. I think what's the big takeaway?
Are we gonna keep doing the bit? Because I feel like Rune's at his wit's end now.
Listen. Canonically, the name Bumblebee is less valid for this particular character than Badassatron is, because he's not called Bumblebee in the film, but he is called Badassatron.
That is completely true.
No, but he can call him B. He does say you can call me B in the film, and I think that's how most of the characters abbreviate his name.
Yeah, but it's just the letter B. It's short for Badassatron.
It's true. It is just short for Badassatron.
127.
I guess you guys want to talk about B now?
I don't think Char finished what he was saying.
No, I was just saying I feel like Optimus Prime maybe was less concerned about Badassatron because he was less invested in him in his personal well-being.
No, that's fair. I get where you're coming from.
Like he met Badassatron like 2 days ago,
Probably not.
That is a fair way to look at it.
But like, I do again. This is one of the things that people still talk about. Even a movie came out like 2 months ago. Is the death trackers or whatever. Yeah, they're called death trackers. Are they drones or do they have cogs or something? And because that does bring a lot of not morality into play, but just more like, oh, Bumblebee's allowed to like slice these dudes up. But
I don't think Sentinel Prime would like allow himself to be surrounded by cogless mooks.
Or rather, not sparkless mooks.
One theory that I've been seeing more and more now, like, oh, I kind of like that. Not in like, oh, it had to be in the movie, but like that kind of makes sense. Is all of the death trackers have the cogs of minor class citizens that were, plucked out of them when they were born or whatever. And
That's interesting.
Maybe.
Like, I could get with that.
I can see it.
My assumption was always that the death trackers were like Sentinel's, I suppose, personal retinue that was with him since before Cybertron. Before his betrayal. Basically, they've been in on it since the beginning. That was my personal theory.
That also works, I'd say.
As well as Arachnid, of course.
Back to Megatron, right? I think the standout was his voice acting. Oh my! Like I didn't.
Oh yeah, he what was his name?
Ryan Thierry Henry.
He was brilliant.
Yeah,
he was brilliant.
The main two that get me, of course, there's the cave thing, but also like when he's just about to gun down Sentinel and Orion stopping him, and he's like, oh man, he sounds so like viscerally upset in like a very realistic way, and it's like, oh, that's
and adding on to this, he had such great range because he could do the mundane buddy riffing thing, and he could also do the big bombastic evil villain speech like seamlessly. It was great.
Yeah, you really feel like when he denounces the Primes and renames himself Megatron, you really feel the authoritarian and the rage pumping inside you. It is incredible.
He just has this presence.
I actually remember going out of the theater and not shouting, but saying, "Lord Megatron, my eternal Lord and Master."
Yeah, no, I think Megatron, if somehow this film never gets a sequel or something, he would be the character I'm most sad to like never see again, aside from maybe like a Generations 2045 or something like that,
Yeah. While we're on the topic of voice actors, can we talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the Thor?
Oh, Chris, right?
Yeah. I thought he was decent.
Yeah, I thought
he did better than I was
he brought his own cadence, especially to Optimus. I really thought he was gonna like riff off of Cullen, but no, it was his own.
He did that at the very end of the film, and I thought it was really cheesy and corny, and I wish he wouldn't do that. But for the rest of the film, I thought he was fantastic. He brought exactly what was needed. He brought exactly what was needed to the character, and I say that as someone who was extremely skeptical and even downright confused as to the initial casting announcement. But he did great.
Yeah,
he was a good Optimus, or honestly, I should say a good Orion Pax.
The only casting choice that really stood out in this film was Keegan Peele's Badassatron.
Yeah, but when you're watching it, it's not that distracting. I think he was all right.
Yeah.
Also,
he was all right.
It's kind of weird when you think about it that like B is about the same age as like Optimus Prime, when he's always like portrayed as the young bot in Transformers. And I know Transformers age weirdly, but it's a weird thing,
Yeah.
Imagine this timeline goes all the way to Earth, and like B is about the same age as Optimus.
There were only two casting decisions that I didn't particularly like. The first one was, what was it, Steve Buscemi as Starscream?
I actually like Steve Buscemi as Starscream.
I really
liked it. A good job.
I hated hearing that voice coming out of Starscream. And the other one was John Hamm as Sentinel Prime. I would have rather they had gotten the guy who played Ratchet from Robots, because he can do that suave, slick son of a bitch voice a lot better than John Hamm can.
Oh yeah, actually, besides like a Shakespearean villain type character, Sentinel really did give me Ratchet vibes.
Yeah, and I was trying to place his voice because he almost sounds similar, but like he couldn't pull off the slimy vibes that I liked so much from Ratchet.
I need to rewatch Robots.
Robots is so fucking good, bro. I watch it like at least once a year.
Damn.
We should do an extracurricular on robots.
We should.
I guess that would be an opportunity to watch robots. Never seen
The
it.
Sleeper GoBots movie.
They don't even turn into anything.
You don't know.
So, Bumblebee, like actually talking about B real quick, right?
Who?
B. Oh, I'm sorry, Badass Atron. Right? My rookie mistake. So, I think the deal with Badass Atron is like I get why he's in the film. Badass Atron's a really well beloved character. You know, he started his own movie, Badass Atron 2018. But the only thing is, like, it feels weird he's this prominent in the movie. You know, traditionally he's like the little kid character, like literally, like not metaphorically for like the franchise as a whole, but like it's just weird to see like Badass Atron just like put up on the same par as like Orion and Megatron, even Alita, I guess, right?
Yeah,
So, like, I get why.
It's weird because, like, outside of being the one who happens to have the map to the Tomb of the Primes, he doesn't have a point to be in the movie at all.
There's a reason I called him the Jar Jar Binks of this film.
Yeah, it's
Okay, maybe in Transformers 3 he'll be in Char. He'll be the reason Unicron shows up or whatever.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I think though, like, yeah, I don't know. It's weird to see this character like show up as a authority figure, or at least what the movie's setting up at the end. You know, Badass Atron's gonna work for the government, which that was a funny joke, honestly.
That was a good joke.
I get to work for the government.
I suppose my question would be though, who would you have instead of Badass Tron in this film? Because I feel like 4 is a good number.
Like it has to be him, you know, like big character and stuff. I guess it's weird to just see him like. Again, traditionally, he's like not the kid character, but like, you know, he's the one who's. I guess he does look up to Orion and D16. He thinks they're his friend. I mean, I guess they are his friends for like a day, you know.
Well, I mean, he's still friends with Optimus. Just...
Yeah, you know, but I don't know. It's just this is like the one movie where I feel like Badass Atron could have not been in it, and it's like, okay, that makes sense. Or like, you know, more reduced role. Like for example, like Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, they're A-list characters, you know. Starscream and Soundwave are probably like S-list if we have to tier like most popular recognizable characters with like general audiences. They don't do too much in the film, you know.
They don't. Actually, that makes me think. Do you think this movie would have worked better if Bumblebee's role was taken up by a proto Starscream?
I don't think so, because I think it's nice to have like a side character. I'm just again surprised how prominent he was, you know.
The way this movie unfolds gives us the uncomfortable implication that Starscream is far older than Megatron.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking about. How Starscream is older than Megatron. That is weird to me.
Kind of like you know, G1 and those Bob Budiansky write-ups. I think. But like the whole deal is Megatron's in G1 a young charismatic leader. Either he's just a gladiator from K-On, like in the Marvel stuff, or in the G1 stuff he was just made by the Constructicons. He shot down Sentinel Prime. Sentinel gave him Matrix Alpha Trion. You know, it's like he's usually actually supposed to be younger. Well, I mean, I guess I can't really say G1 Megatron is younger than Optimus because like cartoon Optimus is made from Orion after Megatron. You know it.
Well, there is some weird nuance about how was Megatron built by the Constructicons or was he upgraded by the Constructicons?
Point is, like, usually Megatron's like a younger guy. I can't really tell you how many times he's been portrayed as like an old dude, you know, like per se.
Well, he's definitely
the only one I can really think of is like maybe Bavers.
Yeah,
well, aligned, I suppose.
Yeah,
but like he's at the very least always coded as old, if you know what I mean.
It's like, just because he was voiced by Frank Welker, who I guess could just pull a voice off like that. But like you're still completely correct. So I guess it is weird to see a universe where Badass Atron and Starscream and stuff might actually be older than Megatron. But yeah, again, I don't think Badass Atron being a main character was bad. It didn't affect the film at all. It's just different from how he's usually portrayed. And stuff.
Yeah. At least they didn't like pretend that he was anything more important than comic relief after they left the sublevels.
Right.
He was just sort of along for the ride because he was lonely.
Yeah,
and they sort of owed it to him to get him out of there, you know.
Yeah, and also they killed his friend. So
yeah, they killed Steve.
They killed Steve.
I can't believe they killed Steve. Steve. Why isn't Steve on this slide?
Because he's dead.
Well, a lot of these characters died and they aren't here.
Yeah, but they had lines.
I don't know what you're talking about. Steve was a central character of the plot.
You're right. He was the one who had the MacGuffin.
Exactly. Wait, you guys couldn't hear Steve talk?
What did he say?
He was talking to Badassatron. He was Badassatron's best friend.
Yeah, but what did he say?
Well, he said, "I'm Steve. I'm Steve. I'm Badassatron's friend." And then he died.
I am Steve.
You're disgusting.
He had this whole monologue, dude.
We haven't said a fucking word about Alita 1.
Alita, well, she's kind of like she's kind of tertiary. She's more important than Badassatron, but less important than the main two. I think she does have a good arc in the film, though.
Yeah, just kind of watching her kind of, I guess, humble her. I think the thing about her is she like humbles herself, but like she's still capable. Like there's a reason she's being set up as like the second in command and stuff. Like you get to see that throughout the film, but she does learn to respect Orion Pax, and I guess Orion learns to also respect her abilities and confide in her and stuff. Like,
well, the arc that. Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
No, I don't know how to explain it, but like she does have character growth in the movie, but I guess it's a lot more not vague, but it's a lot more like subdued compared to like.
Yeah, it's not central to the plot. It's just sort of on the side.
The arc that I see Alita 1 going through in the film is that in the film, she's always obsessed with proving herself by advancing through the levels effectively, through advancing. Like she wants to be, she wants to be a career climber. You know, she's a social climber. She wants to be validated by this system around her. And I think the arc that she has as we go through the movie is that she sort of realizes that her worth, her sense of worth is internal and isn't related to all this stuff from the outside. Yeah. She is great. She is good because she knows that she is good, and she has done things that are good. She's not good because she's in other up level 5 or whatever, you know.
Well, that's a good way to put it. I like that. Like, yeah, that's actually a really great way to put it. Just like, you know,
she still ends up getting exactly what she wanted, though.
Yeah, no, she ends up. But I guess it's a good reward for like, you know, helping to end this unjust system. So it's like, I guess she deserves something.
I mean, yeah. Well, she's there at that point. She's there because I think it works because she wasn't going out of her way to try and get that position. It's just she was the best. She was like the best person for the job at that point. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess it's time to talk about Alpha Trion, right?
I suppose.
Yeah.
I like them. I do think for one, Lawrence Fishburne, that he did do a pretty solid voiceover performance. Again, it's nice to always see like the wise and old sage and stuff, but like, again, this is what I'm talking. I know Alpha Trion's always been a prime, but like this is the one thing where it's like, oh yeah, he is one of the 13 primes, not just the guy who's retroactively made a 13. Or what?
No, I think he was retroactively made a prime, wasn't he?
No, that's what I mean. But it's like, when do you ever think of Alpha Trion as a prime? When the primes exist, you know what? It's like not often, and like this one's one where it's like, oh yeah, he has 13 primes, right? And like he shows it, you know, because he's like awesome and wise and stuff.
Yeah, and he does, and like this movie does that cool thing where it has like a flashback using like material in the scene.
It was
Man
really,
of Steel
It
did
was a
that too, and
diegetic flashback.
yeah, Man of Steel did that too, and I liked it. I liked it here. I eat that shit up.
I kind of wish he was actually in the movie more. Like, I really liked his vibe, like as like a mentor figure, but not like strictly telling him what to do. It's because again, I know you're talking about the whole autonomy thing earlier, but I think like the way he went about it is like he wants each of those 4 guys to make their own choices, like, and like he would rather have them make their own choices than have no choice at all. You know?
Yeah, he seemed kind of unperturbed when he picked up that Megatron was going to kill Sentinel Prime.
Yeah, I'm sure there was some animosity on his part.
Yeah, he was like, that son of a bitch deserved it. Make it painful.
But no, I really like. I'm so glad they didn't go to route of like him, like maybe like talking to Orion one-on-one, being like, "Hey, watch out for your D16," but he might try and like kill Sentinel and start like a global revolution of some kind. No, instead he was like, I don't know what the future holds, but the 4 of you have your choices to make, and I hope you just make the best choice. Like, oh, that was a nice way to go about it instead of just him telling them, "Oh, go do this thing," and they go do that thing and happily ever after and stuff.
This custom says to be honest, kind of looked like Tron gave them cogs because of what D16 said.
I wouldn't.
He was out for blood.
I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't blame him.
I wouldn't blame him either.
Yeah, especially since like he witnessed them die, and then like from his perspective, like 5 minutes later, these 4 Joe Schmoes show up and be like, "Oh, they're all dead," and one of them's like, "I'm gonna fucking kill the guy who did this." If I was Alpha Trion in that situation, I'd be like, "Yeah, go ahead. I'm old."
I'm old now. All of a sudden.
I mean, he was old to begin with, but now he has like grass growing out of his armpits.
It was also cool. I love seeing Transformers with like moss and stuff on them, which I do wish that Prime Changer toy had. Also, fun fact, I had to shop real quick for like lunch and stuff before I popped in today, and I was heavily contemplating buying Alpha Trion, maybe for a custom, but just to mess with him. I might go back because I do have some coupons at Target.
I do need to go on his weathering arc.
Yeah, no, well, like, I hope Studio Series Alpha Trion, if that ever happens, which I assume it's a when, not an if. I do hope they do the weathering and stuff because wow, that was such a cool look.
Yeah, he's got a weird face. He looks like a Kimu from Bionicle.
He does. He looks like he does look like a Kimu. Yeah, from Gen 2. He does sort of look like he does definitely have a Bionicle face going about him, which is kind of funny considering all the other primes had like more conventional Transformer faces, barring Amalgus, I think. But all the others, like Alphatron is the only prime to have that kind of face, and also the only Transformer we see in the film with that kind of face in general.
Yeah, no, that was a good. I feel like it really sells how ancient he is, but then none of the other. Well, okay, like most of them.
Like none of the others are they're all equally as ancient, and Alpha Trion is the only one to have a face like that.
Mm-hmm. There's also Amalgamus, but Amalgamus is just a whole nother kind of creature.
Amalgamus doesn't even have a head. Amalgamus is just like a series of abstract shapes.
He looks like some shit from Man After Man.
He looks like some shit the fucking Combine built.
Oh yeah.
Again, man, that's I hate to talk about Alpha, but like, yeah, no, or not Alpha Amalgamus, but like that's why he's such a cool design. He looks so different.
I like him.
But yeah, no, Alpha Trion. Again, I wish there was more from him, but also I don't know what else he could have done. It's just a character. I like his vibe and stuff. That's really it. Yeah, I just wish there was a little bit more of him, but like he did his part in the movie, which I think was good.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about Are we going to talk about the bad bastard now?
I feel like I've already made my opinions pretty clear on Sentinel. I think he works very well as the bastard villain.
Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't have to be nuanced because he's a bastard. Like of course, a guy like Sentinel would like just scream out his plans or like everything he's done, like and not care because you think
I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die.
He definitely occupies like that same kind of space as like Ratchet from Robots, as we discussed.
Yeah.
He's entirely vain, entirely self-centered, and he's on top of the world, you know?
Hubristic.
Exactly. He is an unrepentant bastard. And that's what makes him, to a degree, a quite fun character. You love
to hate him, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
he just sucks and stuff. And you hate how much of a jerk he is, and like how much he simps up to the Quintessons and stuff. And it's like, yeah. Like there's not much to say about him, but that's like the joy. Like I don't know, sometimes you just want a villain you can throw tomatoes at, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Actually, the more I think about it, no. I was gonna say maybe this film is more like a Shakespearean comedy than a Shakespearean tragedy because the villain is so simplistically evil, like so easy to hate to a degree of like enjoyable hateability. But there are the aspects of tragedy in the film as well. So who's to say?
One thing I do like, this has nothing to do with this character or anything like that. I like that he has a super mode. When was the last time a Transformer had I'm drawing a blank on when the last time we had a Transformer that has like a built-in super mode of some kind. And
I can't think of anything since like UT.
It was like, it's not the craziest thing. Well, I mean, honestly, he does a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of weapons pop out and stuff. It was kind of cool just to see it.
On that token, though, an interesting thing I've noticed is despite like him canonically having a vehicle mode, because his toy has a vehicle mode, he never transforms in the film.
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. I don't know if they only...
Who needs to transform when he has such luscious golden wings?
That's true.
One thing I theorized about was maybe they originally intended it so that his super mode was his alt mode. Like that was the idea.
I mean, I assume they have to be two different models, so like probably just opted to give him this cool like mode with a bajillion weapons instead of just another jet alt mode in the movie that has a bajillion jet alt mode.
Maybe it was a budgetary constraint that they couldn't make a whole new like an extra alt mode as well as the super mode. But I feel like that's, I don't know. He's a main character. You'd think he would, but it's just something I've noticed that he doesn't transform, which is weird. Because you'd think he would, given that transforming is such a central part of the plot. That the main villain, who supposedly has the ability to transform and has taken the ability to transform away from our heroes, would transform at some point in the story, but he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think it subtracts anything. But like, it would have been cool to see an alt mode because again, like every Sentinel toy, all of his toys that are out now or will be out next year with the Studio Series, they all do kind of look slightly different. So it's like, did they have a piece of art to go off of, or like were they just kind of going with the flow? You know, it's just interesting because again, I assume you guys have seen like all the concept art for the movie, and it's like, wow, they went crazy with like how much concept art there is and stuff. So
I was actually going through the concept art for the film. I'll talk about it more in the technical section, but I do have some things that I kind of wish they included.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But yeah, overall, Sentinel, you'll have to hate him, and I think he did his job well. You know, can't really ask for much more. Arachnid was interesting.
I just want to say we've had a Beast Wars movie, and Arachnid made her on-screen debut before Black Arachnia did.
Yeah, that's great. Like I'm glad she wasn't called Black Arachnia in this. Like she screams more Arachnid, right? From what I know about Prime Arachnid, given how I haven't watched much Prime in over a decade, but like again, well, she did her job. Like, you know what I mean? Like she wasn't too.
Yeah, she wasn't much of a character. She was basically just the big bot. She was basically just the big bad henchman.
Yeah, like, and again, I can't really say I asked for much more than that.
Yeah, she didn't really need to be anything else. Like she served her role and she served it well.
What she definitely served like at doing well was like the action. She kind of like they had such a fun time probably animating her in combat compared to like much of the rest of the cast.
From a mechanical standpoint,
and like her arms and whatnot. Again, this is one of those things where it's like the movie's trying not something new per se, but like this is like she has such a fresh design. God knows how they're gonna make a toy out of it in like 2 to 3 years or whenever they get around to making a toy. But
I will say one
I
thing.
can see how to do it.
One thing is like I would have liked to see the back of her head open up more and maybe actually be used in the film at one point, because like it basically only happens when she like jumps onto the train and is pinning down Orion, and she's like, I see everything, and opens up the front of her head, and I don't know, I would have liked to see it utilized more.
A little bit more.
Yeah. But that's the scene where she basically dies.
For me, it's not like it's not supposed to shock or scare anyone. It's just like, oh, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, because for the most part, she did have those. She has her back ones and stuff. So, but I still get what you mean. It would have been cool to see it more.
Maybe in that one scene where they're doing the dealing with the Quintessons and she's like looking out in the back of the head. Maybe if she like opened up the back of her head so all the eyes popped out, maybe that would have been cool. But that's just a little nitpick. I can see how the reveal just at the end was intentional, like a ooh that's surprising.
Yeah, like I can't even say scary or anything like that. Just like oh my goodness.
I don't know. Maybe if you're a little kid watching the film, it could be scary. I can imagine this is like some kids like this is the first time I was scared in the cinema moment.
That's fair. My big thing with more than any character in this movie, I don't know. Again, assuming a sequel happens, I don't know if she's even going to be in it or what they're going to do with her. Because last time we saw her, she was like barely conscious, having her head slammed on the camera hologram thingy. Yeah, no, I don't see her becoming a Decepticon. I feel like Megatron would like just murk her. She won't be an Autobot, but maybe she'll just go whimper to the Quintessons and.
Yeah, I was thinking if she does make a return, she'll probably be with the Quintessons or something like that.
Maybe they turn into her a spider thing, and that's when she dubs herself like Black Arachnia.
Perhaps.
But yeah, no. Overall, again, she's kind of in the same class as Sentinel, where like she did her job well. Not much to say about her, but like she was a frightening antagonist. And sometimes that's all you need. Darkwing,
literally me.
Darkwing was a guy I liked. Again, like to hate him, but I feel like he was kind of. I would assume kind of emblematic of what most of the COG class were. Well, I can't say because again, I'm sure most of the COG class were some fine folk, but
most COG bots were like they weren't like actively hostile towards the COG bots. They were just like, oh, that's a funny thing, and they didn't seem to be like. Obviously, we don't really get enough time at the end of the film to see it, but there isn't much like backlash, I suppose. With the
and that's kind of one thing. Again, if the sequel is gonna hopefully be as like well thought out as this movie was in terms of just having some like things to think about. I would like to know what the COG bots would think about like suddenly everyone being COG. Like would most of them accept it? Would most of them join the Autobots or Decepticons? Just stuff like that. It's not like it shouldn't be the focus of the next film, but like it's something I think
it would be interesting to see addressed.
Yeah, because like, what do you do when everyone's suddenly on equal ground, or equal footing? Like, I feel like there's something to talk about with them.
I liked.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say I think Darkwing served his role well as the tertiary antagonist.
I'm just surprised he was. I'm surprised he was kind of everywhere in this movie. He was maybe one. I don't think he was one of the guys at the very start chasing Ryan. Those were two.
No, he wasn't. We had a conversation about this before the stream, and it turns out he wasn't.
I just wonder who those two guys were. They'll probably just name them like Dreadwing and Dreadwind or something like that.
Maybe something like that. Yeah.
As like easy Studio Series repaints. We'll get Darkwing eventually, but
I mean, if they make a toy of this figure, I would not mind getting a couple repaints because it's
basically like he was a racer. He was the boss or like supervisor or whatever for the miners. He somehow was able to get to Orion and D and like throw him down the shed. A lot of the movie was maybe his fault in some way. If he didn't throw them down, if he threw them down to like sub-level like 49 or something like that, then like
yeah, he was arguably the undoing of the society that he was so.
Again, I wonder where he'll be in the if he shows up in the next film. You know, I don't think he will, personally speaking.
No, I don't think so. I think for all intents and purposes, he would be incapacitated.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't be I don't know. Maybe he'd be a Decepticon. But then again, it might be another situation where Megatron holds a grudge against him. But then again, it was more of a thing against Orion. But no, I don't know. It would. I don't know. I feel like it would. It's one of those things where it's not that important where he goes, and it's kind of hard to find a place for him in any of the factions.
Right. Yeah. So maybe again, I like to imagine that there will be like a third party or like a third faction, or they just would join up with the Quintessenza. I don't really see how that's beneficial per se for them, but we'll see. But yeah, overall, Darkwing is overall, I think all three. I guess we can call Darkwing a main or like you said, I think tertiary antagonist is a better way to put it.
Yeah,
I think they all served their roles well and stuff to just varying degrees. They didn't need to be anything super deep. I think that's better saved for the next film when we have an actual ideological conflict between Autobot and Decepticon.
mm-hmm.
And that brings us to the High Guard, where it's like, yeah, I really dig the idea of the High Guard because, like,
I like the High Guard, but what confuses me about them is that they. Oh yeah. What confuses me about the High Guard is like the ideological difference between them and the Primes, I suppose, because for the High Guard, they're all about the strength of one bot over another is all that matters, whereas the Primes have these really high ideals, and supposedly the High Guard were second only to the Primes. They were
the gist is the High Guard were the kind of the Senate Guard, not Senate Guard, Senate aren't a famous movie. They're like the guards of the Primes or something like that. The High Guard.
They were like the ones who would work.
I would imagine that this particular outlook was formed by being stuck on the surface for so long. I don't think it was something that they took into their exile. I think their exile is what shaped it.
Well, that is probably the explanation. But I don't know. I'm not sure if I would have wanted that to be more explicit, but I feel like that could. Well, there's a lot of things that could have been explored more in this film. I'll just say that. But you're probably right that it probably was a result of them being stuck in the desert without supplies for so long. Goodness knows how much cannibalism went on.
Oh geez, yeah. I don't know. My assumption is that 50 cycles changes a bot, But
Yeah.
I will say, I think Steve, like if we're talking Starscream specifically first, like Steve Buscemi is probably in the running for one of my favorite Starscream voice actors now. I think he did
really well, yeah.
Why didn't we do this before, I hope.
I'm kind of surprised he wasn't like cast as Starscream in 2007.
I think the funniest thing is that he earns the Starscream voice, like the gravity. You know how people are like in these like origin movies and stuff like that? They're like, oh, such an X character earns Y aspect of their character, right? And
yeah,
Starscream earns his gross gravelly voice by being choked out by Megatron, and I think that's really funny. But,
Also,
I kind of like how he has his own ideology separate to Megatron. Megatron adopts it in his own way, but I'm sure Starscream's not going to be 100% down with it. So
I really like how they set up. They make a setup for Starscream to be envious of Megatron because now Megatron has usurped him.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Like straight up, I hope they don't go overboard with it in a possible sequel, but instead I hope they kind of build it up. If we're doing a trilogy, I hope it like builds up something by like the third movie, right? And then Soundwave and Shockwave were just there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do much. They just, Shockwave did actually crack like 2 funny jokes or funny lines. That was really good, actually. But yeah, they were there. They're just probably there.
It's kind of funny how in the movie they end up working with Optimus and Elita 1 more than they do with Megatron.
That's the thing I really liked about the movie. Like, if we're going back to story stuff, because I know I wasn't here for a fair bit, I really liked how, like, I don't want to say we get a glimmer of it, but like we see like, oh yeah, Orion can bring even like polar opposites together. I mean, sure, like the miners the miners and High Guard didn't fight together hand in hand necessarily, but like the fact that like he was able to bring all these people together, it's like, oh, they're Optimus, like there is some credence to the thing where Optimus is like, we could have built a better world together, you know? And it's like, oh yeah, he shows it. And I feel like a lot of people haven't talked about it. And but it's like something important to talk about because like, yeah, he could have very well, if Megatron didn't go down the path he did, we could have gotten a truly united Cybertron, you know?
Yeah, that is probably true. Well, yeah, that's a big aspect of the movie.
Mm-hmm. But it's just when I don't see a lot of people talk about a lot, you know. But like, you know, there's so much to talk about this movie, so like I kind of get it. But...
Yeah, I suppose. I do actually. One thing is, I do find it funny how like the whole thing is, the High Guard follows Megatron because he proved himself to be the strongest, and then Optimus Prime beats Megatron in a fight. One wonders if Optimus hadn't banished the High Guard along with Megatron, would they have just followed him?
That's a really good point, actually. Again, because like, okay, to be fair, Alita was threatening, so like, that's part of it. Like she was threatening to beat up Shockwave, and he probably convinced the rest of the High Guard to join up with them. But like, Optimus probably still played a part. He was like, you know, I'm sure he could have convinced them even harder. You know, like if
what I mean is like in the climax of the film, Optimus just straight up beats Megatron in a fight 1-on-1.
Oh no, that's true. I get maybe he was being, I don't know if being rash is the right word, but again, that's the thing where it's like, oh, it's making I like again how it's like thinking like, oh, could he have gone about this in a more just way for like the High Guard who didn't. I mean, yeah, they joined up for that fight. I guess that was the problem. Like, you know, Megatron was so easily able to sway the High Guard and start.
I suppose that was what Optimus was thinking about at that point. That the High Guard was so in with Megatron at that point. They were so in on his thing. That it was like he wasn't going to be able to sway them without swaying Megatron, and Megatron at that point was gone.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But otherwise, you know, I think they did their job really well, and they are probably the characters I want to see expanded most in the sequel. I wouldn't mind if Alita and Battistron kind of take a backseat to go more into like the Decepticon way of thinking, way of life, whatever. Seeing just what things are like from their point of view, what's their politics looking like at this point, assuming there's a bit of a time skip. I just would like to see those guys explored more.
I would absolutely be interested. I would absolutely not say no to a more Decepticon focused film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, because again, with how much focus was on the miners, it's like that's kind of this is kind of the Autobot side of stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, did you guys have anything else to add about characters and whatnot?
Not me. That was pretty exhaustive.
Yeah, no, that was extreme. I guess one more thing I can add is, I'll be real. The way people were talking about this movie, it sounded like everyone from all of Transformers history was going to be in this movie, right? But I kind of dig that it wasn't like that. Like it was nice to just kind of see like the main classic album, not go like way crazy into it. Nicest one was probably Jazz. Like it feels so nice to see Jazz in something again, even if he wasn't doing all too much. Just like hear from him and see him with his door wings and stuff. I thought that was cute and just nice to see him again. Hope it means that Jazz Renaissance is on the way.
So I guess that wraps it up for talking about characters.
I
next
agree.
slide is technicals, and let's see. I'm not exactly sure what this slide is for. Runestone, do you can you elucidate?
Do you notice I haven't said anything since we were talking about Megatron?
Yeah, it kind of got carried away.
Well, I thought it spoke for itself, really. It's about things like the animation, the voice acting, the sound work, and all that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought the film looked really pretty. Like, just straight up. Like, if we're talking how it looks, like, It looked excellent. And again, for only 75 million, I guess this is what we call a mid-budget animated movie nowadays. And it's like, wow. They did a lot with that money, I think. It was genuinely really impressive. Especially stuff on the surface, like just kind of the environments, the scene with the sun kind of peering over, big, like just gorgeous, just like I don't know what to say. How do you guys feel about the art style? Because I feel like the art style was like super contentious when the movie came out. I think most people at this point have kind of mellowed out on it. You know?
Yeah, that's basically how it went for me. I was a bit perturbed by it, especially when that first. You remember, like months before the
sketch,
sketch that came out that showed like a really round Optimus and Megatron designs, and they were like really bare bones and basic, and everyone was like, "No, that can't possibly be what they look like. They look so bad." And then it turns out that's exactly what they looked like to the letter. I was not a big fan of that sketch, and I wasn't that big of a fan of how it looked in the first trailer, but as time went on and the more I got to see of all of these designs in motion, and finally seeing the film where you get to see these characters' designs progress over the course of the film, it definitely came off a bit better. I still have some minor gripes about it. The characters are a bit too evergreen for my taste. And they're still quite round. And I know we were discussing on my server, linked in the description, by the way, that on VC that you had some problems regarding like kibble placement and how obvious it was that they actually transformed and shit like that. And I definitely understand those kinds of complaints. I was also very perturbed by the way the faces looked on their initial reveal. They looked very uncanny, but now I've grown used to it. So it is probably what we have is probably better than like segmented faces would probably look. So,
yeah. I feel like once you see them on the big screen and stuff, it genuinely just kind of really helps a lot. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, seeing everything in context makes it a lot easier to just take in as at face value, pun intended.
Yeah, no, I think Orion is the one where it looks. I still think it looks wonky with Orion, right?
He's got a huge nose.
Yeah, he does.
Like I was watching the movie 2 nights ago, and I was like, he has a honking schnoz.
But I feel like I don't know. Again, going back to my favorite character, Megatron, right? Something about Megatron is like, oh, that's a handsome face, and like it fits really well on him and stuff.
Twitter would agree with you.
Like I feel like he turned out totally fine and stuff, you know.
Yeah, I've said it before, but I feel like I agree with Kit. The problem is like, part of my problem is like even when they have cogs, and this goes for like most of the cogbot designs of the film, is it's kind of hard to tell what they actually turn into from like looking at them, and I think that's a pretty important aspect of a Transformers design, being able to figure out what they turn into. The biggest exception, I think, is the biggest exception to this rule is Optimus or Orion Pax. It's pretty easy to tell what he turns into, but that's probably just because, you know, the base Optimus Prime design is just so strong that it's hard not to do it well.
Yeah, no, it's you know, sometimes it's excuse me, it's sometimes just really hard to mess with iconic designs. So that's, again, I'm kind of okay with this being slightly. It's not. I don't know. To me, though, this movie doesn't expressively feel evergreen. But like, I mean, at the end of the day, these are like the same designs we've been seeing for like 40 years. But also sometimes it's just like you kind of have to. I feel like the movies usually. I feel like they should get more of a pass than the cartoons. The cartoons, I think that's where you got to keep reinventing it. You know, because like Cyberworld comes out next year, I think. Or it's coming out in the near future, and it's like, there's like a 99% chance it's going to be the exact same designs again, or not exact same like 1-to-1.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're just reusing designs from Earthspark, aren't they?
I could very well see it. Who knows? Like some of the characters are new, so like there's a Skybite, a Galvatron, like Snarl's there. So like I assume it'll be different. But like one look at the Mirage design from Paramount like thing presentations, like that's probably Cyberworld Mirage. It's like, oh, that's just G1 Mirage again. Okay. But like I feel like the movies, since these are like the biggest thing people see, I think it's okay if they look familiar enough, Live action, I do like it when they switch it up, don't get me wrong, but still at the end of the day, it's like I feel like you have to keep those iconic designs sometimes. But I do agree that it can get a little boring. A lot boring. It just depends on what the media is, But I know you mentioned it, Char, right? So
yeah.
Just talk about this. I don't know if you have any slides for it per se, but the concept art, I don't know her name off the top of my head, like one of the lead designers for like the character design and whatnot of TF1. She's been dropping all this concept art. ILM, their official website's been dropping the art, and it's like, wow. Like, I do like how there's some semblance of a vision, or no, not even. There's a very good, strong semblance of a vision with like character design and stuff.
One of the things that I like that from the concept art that seemed to be unfortunately dropped was I really like the livery on the concept designs for the Velocitron 500 bots.
Yeah, no, all of them have really slick designs, and also someone pointed out, since now we have clear designs for the racers, and of course, like we've seen the movie, a lot of them are also used for like some of the cogged versions of like the Autobots and stuff, and I think that's really so like maybe one day we'll get some of these racers as figures, which I think would be really cool, especially if they do add livery and stuff. But I wish they had more livery, because I think they already have enough livery in the film, but like more would have been cool. But like
I can promise you that Toy Hacks is well aware of these racing liveries. So if we get toys of them, we're definitely getting sticker sets. I can assure you.
Okay, excellent.
I can't. I'm not speaking for them, but like I'm like 90% sure that they're going to be tuned in. Like,
again, I don't know when we'll ever get the racers and cogs. I feel like they have to do them. If we're going back to stupid toys, right? I think Studio Series of the cog guys and the racers have to happen at some point. They're like, I feel like they'd be popular enough, especially the cogged Autobots. But it's just, I guess, more a matter of when they'll do them than if. But I feel like they'll happen down the line. The one design that got dropped from the movie that I kind of wish was in the movie. Have you guys seen the reflector design?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing I feel like Reflector shows it best because he is a simpler design. I assume he would have been a pretty simple model had he been in the movie, or had they been in the movie if it was multiple reflectors. It's like you can actually kind of tell where things go in the alt modes, and I really like that actually. I do like how they cared about like the transformation sequence and whatnot, especially coming off of Rise of the Beast, which I think Rise of the Beast is kind of a very middling movie, to be honest. And one of the things that
less than middling, if most people are to be believed.
That's fair. I think one thing that made it middling for me was just it's like they didn't really care about the art of the transformation. I can think of multiple transformation sequences where it's like, oh, okay, that's not good. And to be fair, it's because they outsourced it to I forgot what company, right? But I don't know. It's nice to see the movie come out immediately after. Do put some thought into like how these guys move and stuff. It's obviously it's not good. It's going to be more complex than like a UT toy or something like that. So it's not like you can see step by step, but just kind of the vibe of the transformation was really nice to see.
Initially, I did have the issue that it was kind of hard. It's hard to read what vehicles turn into. But I am sort of coming around to the idea that a lot of that comes from just the fact that these are Cybertronian vehicles. I suppose I would have preferred if the vehicle modes themselves were more recognizable. I understand that, it's an alien society. They're not turning into vehicles. They're turning into, like, things to get around. But I still would have liked for more identifiable details for the screen.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very valid. But yeah, and I still think in terms of regards to character design, I think for everyone it took some use getting to, but I think at the end of the day they did shine and kind of win most people's minds on them, which is cool because again you can't really say the same for like the evergreen designs. Earthspark designs are a bit, I don't know if people debate about them. It's just at this point, I think when it comes to like established characters, it's pretty boring most of the time. This time it felt different enough that like we could talk about them and stuff, I feel like if we were having this conversation about like Earthspark, like if we were doing an episode about Earthspark instead of TF1, we'd probably just gloss over the designs and stuff real quick,
Yeah.
Which is a shame. Again, I do, back to what I was saying like a few minutes ago, I think it's more important for the TV shows to reinvent than the movies, personally speaking. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about kind of the technical aspects of the film. I'm not well versed on like animation and stuff, so all I can say is movie looks pretty, make me happy.
Have we talked about the Quintesson design yet?
I don't believe we have.
All right. Well, I know Kit had a few opinions on that, so I want to make sure Kit's here for this.
Oh yeah.
I really, really like the Quintesson designs in this film. Specifically, I like the designs of the Quintesson spaceships. I think they were really cool. They had this great biomechanical, not even mechanical, just this sort of biological design. They looked like they were giant spacefaring crustaceans.
It definitely reminded me of the Formic ships from the live action Ender's Game film. I don't know if any of y'all have seen that.
I haven't.
I'll send y'all a pic at some point. But they were these very organic and spiky ships, very back heavy too. It just made my monkey brain happy.
What they sort of put me in the mind of is the Quintessons are sort of like squid creatures almost. So I imagine them being aquatic in origin. And so the way the ships look made me think of the tool breeders from the All Tomorrows.
I knew it. I knew someone was going to mention it, and it's like that's really the tool breeders. They could totally just make a ship like that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's explicitly mentioned in the book that they made living spaceships.
Right, and it's like, yeah, that's I doubt it was an influence on any director's mind, or like Jason Schreier. He was the guy who did a lot of design stuff for him. But it's like, yeah, no, I love that. That was such a stick. I'm so glad they weren't just G1, but again, they tried something new, and I think it really works. And I could see it being a thing where, like, if the Quintessons come, well, I mean, the Quintessons are they're going to be in Earthspark, or they are in Earthspark. They're in Skybound and stuff. But like, I would love to see like this kind of Quintesson aesthetic mesh with the original. I feel like you could get something way cooler than.
This is one of those things where I actually would have preferred a bit more adherence to G1, just because I thought it would have been really cool to see one of those five-faced bastards on the big screen.
That's still fair. I'm
just treating the one that we saw string up Sentinel Prime on the surface as like a colonial governor.
Yeah,
not like a true capital Q Quint.
I think we will see a five-faced judge or something of the sort at some point, but for now, it's kind of cool that they just didn't do it and just had something a little different instead. I like the grunts. I like they seem like some kind of, I don't want to say Halo. I've never really played much Halo, so I don't want to be misinformed, but like they seem like some kind of sci-fi shooter enemy that like rolls around and shoots you with guns and stuff. You gotta hit them in the weak spot to make them like explode until they got a puddle of blood and guts.
BioDragon says he say they're more Geiger-esque instead of techno-organic.
I don't know. I'm not sure if I would say Geiger-esque, because Geiger sort of leaned into the more almost human forms, or like mollusks, whereas the Quintesson spaceships are more crustacean inspired. They look more like crabs, Though I can see the argument for them being Geiger-esque as well. Maybe I'll have to think on that. But definitely like they look as though these ships look as though they have been grown rather than built, which is very cool.
It is a really cool style. I don't know. Yeah, I just like it. What can I say? That's really about it. This looks cool.
Absolutely.
It's not just the scenery and designs that deserve attention, but even the character animation I found was spot on with this film. And to give an example of that, I refer back to the scene where Orion Pax takes the shot that D16 meant for Sentinel, and D initially grabs onto Orion, who's fallen over the edge of the building they're on, and the visuals waste no time in conveying every conflicting emotion that D is going through at that moment. Shock, distraught, regret, betrayal, resentment, increasing anger, all in the span of a few seconds. And the optics changing color is just the cherry on top, as it wasn't clearly shown that was something that Cybertronians could do, and thus that catches the audience off guard and adds that extra punch to the moment.
He's just built different.
Yeah. Obviously the voice acting plays a big part in all this, no doubt about that. But the animation complements and completes that entire moment, if you will.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, the scene in the cave where Megatron goes on that rant will always be my favorite scene. Like, full stop. Nothing's going to come close to that. But that scene on top of, I don't know what else to call it, the shrine, the fountain, was top notch. Seeing Optimus sacrifice himself and just you could hear a pin drop in the screen when we saw it. And we can talk about music in a bit later, but this movie also really knew when not to play any music, and this was the perfect moment to keep it dead silent.
Oh, for sure.
I also think this whole scene was maybe a cheeky callback to Dark of the Moon, where it was also Optimus, Megatron, and Sentinel fighting together, and Optimus loses an arm. Except this time Megatron actually kills Sentinel Prime instead of Optimus.
I'm not entirely sure if that was intentional, but I can see the parallels. Almost a role reversal situation there, actually.
Yeah. Just flipping it on its head.
It would have been like the cherry on top of that situation where I don't know, Megatron's about to lose the fight with Sentinel, and then Optimus Prime intervenes. But I suppose that would then.
Yeah, could you imagine Chris Hemsworth going like, "Who would you be without me, D16?" And he's like, "Time to find out," and just drops him.
Yeah. maybe wouldn't have had this felt the same as a scene, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give it to you. I'm done saving you. Is a much better line.
Yeah.
On the topic of vocal performances, does anyone think that Scarlett Johansson's performance as Alita 1, she sounds an awful lot like Strong Arm from RID 2015?
I've never actually watched any Red 2015, so unfortunately I can't answer that question.
I see it.
It's been about 5 years since I've seen it, so I can't say.
I mean, they sort of have that same character archetype as the character who's obsessed with protocol, you know. So I can definitely see them having a similar performance. I presume that RID 2015 Strong Arm isn't played by Scarlett Johansson, though.
No, it's Constant Zimmer.
I'll admit that name doesn't mean anything to me, but yeah, I presumed not. But yes, I do see the parallels between their performances.
Since we got some dead space going, I think it'd be a good time to talk about maybe the music. We have a returning Transformers composer, by the name of oh god, what's his name? Brian Tyler. He is well known in this fandom for scoring Transformers Prime, but his other big claims to fame are scoring the films Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World. And if you're anything like me, you hear a certain song he wrote at least 20 times a year because he wrote the Formula One theme song as well. So, what did y'all think about his score? Namely, I noticed, or at least a lot of people noticed, that there were quite a few callbacks to previous pieces in Transformers history, like stuff from the Bayverse and stuff from his previous work in Transformers Prime. Do y'all think he tied that in well? Do you think it was shoehorned? And do you think his music gave this film its own identity, sonically speaking?
I will be totally honest. I didn't really notice anything. The music to me, maybe it was just because it wasn't the thing I was focusing on. But the music didn't really stand out to me for this film, score wise.
Gonna be honest, I don't really blame you. I probably wouldn't have noticed anything unless I was listening for it. I was tipped off beforehand.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah. When I do my next viewing of this film, I will be listening out for it now.
Yeah, my thing is, like, again, I'm more of a toy guy than a media guy. So, like, the fact he was able to put leitmotifs in from, like, past TF fiction and I couldn't recognize it, I think that kind of was... I think that speaks as to how, like, it didn't really matter. It just made it, like... It made it nice. You know? I don't know how to explain it. It's just, like... I'm glad
maybe if you included some stuff from like the Bayformers trilogy, it would have been more recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
But like there was this one part of the movie where the music was clearly based on a track called "We Have to Go" from The Last Night, which is one of its standout tracks. But obviously, since that movie was so poorly received, not many people cared to pay attention to the score like I did. So I guess it went over everyone's heads except for the people who were looking for stuff like that. Garrett Yu says the fall also calls back to the Death of Optimus Prime track from the 1986 score. I'll have to listen to that to check it out. I didn't notice that when I watched it. But allegedly, there were also callbacks to Calling All Autobots from Age of Extinction and the very big leitmotif, the Transformers Prime theme song, which Brian Tyler wrote himself.
Again, I'm surprised I didn't recognize like any of those at all. But again, I don't think it's the bad thing. It's just like it made it its own still, you know, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah. I don't have particularly strong opinions on this score, and I definitely don't think it'll be iconic or stand the test of time like the score for the 2007 film did. The 2007 score was just something very, very special.
I mean, people still make memes and shit using the 2007 score. Like it's still in the public consciousness almost like a decade and a half later.
Are you confusing score for soundtrack?
Maybe.
The only memes I find are about Linkin Park.
Yeah, maybe I'm probably getting those confused. Though I don't know, I feel like I've heard that score used in memes as well, though.
Perhaps. I can't think of any.
I feel like it's still part of like the public musical conscience when it comes to like movie soundtracks. 2001 score, like the da 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 da. Everyone knows where that's from, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
Bruce, do you have anything to add?
To the music, not particularly.
Oh, okay. What else would y'all like to talk about on the technical side of this film? I mean, if we've exhausted all the topics, we could go to the next slide. I just want to give everyone a fair chance.
I think I'm good on my end. I think I'm ready to move on personally.
All I can really say is I do like how I like how much thought was put into, I guess, the mechanical aspects of the Transformers designs, and also the mechanics of the mechanics of Iacon itself and how those affect the story, like how Megatron drives up one of those giant bridges. Like they set up those self-building bridges in the beginning of the movie, and then in the end of the film, one of those bridges is used for Megatron to drive up to the surface.
Oh, that shot with Megatron and the High Guard retreating was beautiful.
That was
I really liked it. Very, very like Stairway to Heaven vibes.
Yeah. And I like how they worked the way that the design of the set design, I suppose. I like how they worked the set design and made it work with the story. I mean, it was very competent.
I did think of another question I'd like to ask y'all's opinion on. The surface of Cybertron is far more organic than most portrayals of Cybertron. What were y'all's opinions on that? Did y'all like it? Did y'all not worry? Was it a little confusing? Was it what are your thoughts on it?
I thought the organic surface was perhaps just a byproduct of the Quintessons taking over the surface of the planet.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But and maybe that is the case for like the more leafy stuff. But there is still wildlife, and we see them react very favorably to the return of Energon. Like those deer that we see, those I think are probably Cybertron native, because they seem to require Energon. But for all I know, maybe this Quintessons require Energon too. I guess it's okay to keep it ambiguous.
You know what might actually be horrifying? If those fawn were Transformers all along that went through a domestication.
Oh, we're really getting into all tomorrows. We're really getting into all tomorrow.
Like, if you don't know, this is another thing from IDW's comics where domestication basically refers to removing, like in the context of beast Transformers, removing their transformation cogs, trapping them in their beast modes, and basically putting them through the Cybertronian equivalent of a lobotomy, reducing them to primitive animals. Like I'm not sure what purpose that would serve in this story particularly, but it's honestly interesting yet also horrifying to think about.
The DJD did that with their lion wolf pet man thing, right? I never read IDW.
Yeah, spoilers for IDW's comics, by the way.
Yeah, though, I'm telling you, the Quintessons are just the Q. They're just the Q for Transformers.
What do you think? What do you think Q stands for?
Holy shit!
Ah.
Holy shit! Did CM Kozman mean this all along? CM Kozman confirmed a Transformers fan.
I guess we can move along to the last major topic. Humor and references.
Yeah, this is where I would like to give my thoughts on that first trailer, because this, like, in relation to the humor and all that, this is where I feel the first trailer really fucked this movie over. Yes, like, my fellow deans have ranted on about this, and so will I. Because before it came out, we knew the basic premise. Early life on Cybertron with focus on Optimus and Megatron as they go from friends to enemies, to the point where it essentially leads to a planetary civil war. Now, you'd think an arc like that would have a lot of dramatic and emotional weight to it. Then the first trailer dropped, and I know people say don't judge a film just from the trailer, and in a sense they're right, but it's all we had to go off of at the time. And from what we got, it ended up marketing the film as this incredibly goofy, light-hearted comedy. I suspect they were trying to get as many laughs as possible to make the movie seem fun to draw people in, which isn't inherently bad. The problem, however, wasn't the mere inclusion of jokes, but A, the ones they chose, and B, there were too many for its own good. Like, the first trailer makes it abundantly clear that B-127 is the main comic relief, with his quirky chatterbox persona. But even beyond that, it opens with Orion and D16 waiting to be punished, with D saying to Orion, "I'm not talking to you," only to talk to Orion seconds later.
I actually thought that one was really good. I liked that one. I even when the first trailer dropped, I laughed at that one. I liked it.
Well, I guess it's just more of how obvious the joke was, but then there's when they're partaking in the Iacon race, we get, "If we survive this, I'm gonna kill you. I accept those terms." Get it? It's foreshadowing. Then there's the whole bit where the four are running out of the cave. They're about to test their newly acquired cogs, and just as they start counting to 3, they fall off a cliff while the trackers are watching from a distance. This is, of course, followed by the sequence of them struggling to transform. The list goes on. I mean, it wasn't all jokes. We got some of the action sequences, that close-up shot of Megatron with that Decepticon symbol branding iron, but it wasn't enough. And all of this is accompanied by upbeat pop music. I mean, on top of potentially spoiling what could end up being the best jokes you have to offer, it, as I think ID said, it completely undermines the premise as well as the actual tone of the film, and in particular, paints some of the cast in a pretty bad light. Like, Orion, as presented in the first trailer, comes off as this reckless thrill seeker whose arc is about learning to be more responsible. And like we've discussed, there are elements of that in the film, but it's not the whole picture. And yes, I know that they included the "it's time to show them where more than meets the eye" line, which in context ties to how he's trying to improve the social standing of the cogless bots. But of course, being a truncated clip in a trailer, it comes off as them blatantly shoehorning in one of the franchise's biggest taglines. B-127 especially, like, even if you don't like him or you don't find him funny, he gets done dirty in this trailer. Aside from the aforementioned motor mouth shtick and that fucking Badassatron joke, you have the moment where they're trying to transform. B skids down the hill in alt mode, save for his arms sticking out, shouting, "I need wheels." He crashes into the ground, and then when his wheels pop out, he responds with "woo." They remove the "woo" from the final cut, but with it, he just comes off as this oblivious idiot who doesn't take matters seriously at all. Then there's the scene of the four of them standing on the train staring into the distance, and after a few seconds, B legs it in a comedically exaggerated fashion, and the clip cuts just as the other three are about to run off too, so B comes off as a coward. Again, in context, there is a giant rock formation approaching them and destroying the train they're standing on. Oh, and don't forget the moments where B discovers he has built-in weapons by accidentally killing a tracker, as well as when he wrecks the control room. Just, ugh. I mean, if anything, Darkwing comes off better than he does in the film, as while he isn't portrayed as a good guy, it's easy to assume that he's just this gruff and tough bot that's just trying to do his job. In short, the vibe the first trailer gives off is that this film stars four bumbling underdog protagonists who only achieve their goals through sheer happenstance. By comparison, the second trailer actually showcases the discrimination against cogless bot from the guards, including Darkwing, and Orion basically telling him where to shove it with that finger transformation joke. They also feature the transmission from Cybertron's surface, thus establishing why the quartet end up there to begin with. Like, we see more of the bond between Orion and D16, there's still jokes. As you have moments such as Orion being told to speak up when they're saying transform and roll out, showing that he's a leader in progress. But stuff like that gets the point across so much better. That the second trailer is the one we should have gotten from the start, because the first one, in hindsight, was just a bad look. Like, I'm not going to say that it 100% contributed to TF1's poor box office performance, but I'll bet it didn't help.
I'm just glad that neither trailer had Alita fucking say, "You don't have the touch or the power." I fucking groaned. I groaned when she said that in the film.
Yeah, just be glad that Optimus and Megatron didn't do the whole "one shall stand and one shall fall."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess to respond to what you said, I actually really like the "I'm not talking to you" joke, and I thought it was actually a really good introduction to the. I'm pretty sure it was how the trailer opened, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it establishes them as friends who like don't always get along because they get in trouble, and I just like Optimus's snarky "I thought you weren't talking to me" response. It got a laugh out of me. Even in the theater, I liked that one. And let's be honest, they did not spoil the best joke, which was when Optimus was cornered in the archives, and he was like, "Oh yeah, watch this," and he starts moving his arms and legs all robotic to make it look like he transforms, and then it just cuts to him running away. I fucking cackled. I cackled every time both times I saw the movie. Right, that's my favorite joke by far.
I have a confession to make, actually. I actually laughed at the Badass Tron scene in the film. Specifically, I laughed at the one scene where he's annoying Alita 1 with it. That was the one time where it got a laugh out of me.
I like the part where
was in the second trailer.
I don't think it was. I like the part where Alita tells him to stop talking, and he's like, "Oh, you want me to stop talking about my name?" And just continues to talk about other things.
Well, yeah, I mean, the humor is, it's not just that B's motor mouth, like I said before, but it's also the character's reaction to him being a motor mouth that makes up the humor. Like, one of my favorite moments, like I'm not typically a laugh out loud kind of person, but when they're captured and brought before the High Guard and B is gagged, and Alita when Alita questions why, Shockwave said that he wouldn't stop talking, and Alita's like, even when he was unconscious, especially when he was unconscious.
Oh god, I had a brain fart.
It was good. I like. I think the what the film did well that the movie what the film did well that the trailer sort of undermined was that the characters took the situations that they were in seriously for the most part, whereas like the trailer sort of showed it like sort of gave the impression that the characters were always cracking jokes even in like life and death situations, which is
that's a thing that happened.
Yeah, which is a thing that annoys people in a lot of movies these days. It's like one of the biggest tropes that people have issues with, that characters just don't take the situations they're in seriously, so it takes away from the drama.
Yeah, when that first trailer dropped, I was so scared that this movie was just full of Marvel humor. Like, exactly. The biggest example of like a Marvel movie doing this to me was probably like the ending of Thor Ragnarok, where they're watching Surtur destroy Asgard and stuff, and Thor is just looking on helpless and sad, and Korg is like, he's like, it's okay, as long as he doesn't destroy the foundation, we'll always be able to rebuild it. And then like Asgard just blows up, like it is supposed to be like this funny lol so random thing, and he's like, oh well, never mind. It just really undercut what could have been a dramatic moment, and I'm glad that Transformers 1 did not do anything like this. It was my biggest fear going into it, and I was glad when I saw Jeremy Johns's review of the movie, because he explicitly said that this movie does not do that thing. It does not do the thing I was afraid it was going to do. It lets dramatic scenes play out. And I really appreciated that review. Him saying that one sentence is what sold me. Is what let me actually not skip the movie.
Yeah, that's what I felt would be the case with B127, especially, like I said. And while he does have comical reactions, they seem kind of appropriate for the situation. Like when he says, like, I can't believe this has just happened. I mean, obviously it did happen because I saw it, but still, like, it's a fairly believable reaction to have.
And when he's not even saying it for a joke; he's just being serious.
And when Alpha Trion when he initially drops that truth bomb on them in the first place, and B says "what" in that comically high pitched voice, let's be honest, anyone would have that reaction.
Yeah. And besides, I think Badassatron's quirky nature probably has something to do with his very long-term isolation. So it's at least forgivable, if not a little understandable, for him to be like that.
One wonders if it was the chicken or the egg, though.
True. I mean, he said he was only put down there because he was a fuck up, but. So now he's a government job, which is realistic.
Despite what I said about it in regards to the first trailer, I do still kind of get a chuckle about like the scene where they're struggling to transform. Like Orion's running down with his head in his chest cavity. Meg has this long peg leg. And you know what? B127, to his credit, he almost succeeds in transforming on his first try. Except for his arms sticking out.
It was just a disservice that they almost played the whole scene in the first trailer, when the first trailer was as god awful as it is.
And you do get a sort of heartwarming excitement to like they've just experienced transforming and they've defeated the trackers, and then they transform back to robot mode, and they're all just happily chatting to each other, like they're just so excited that they've been able to transform for the first time. It's really like touching in a weird way.
That's fair. I'd be excited, I guess, if I could transform and whatnot.
Yeah, can you imagine like how that scene, like assuming like we adopt like the characters we use for our avatars, do you imagine how that would work out for us? Like how like air raid, Dark of the Moon air raid with just a giant tail fin for a hand.
Where's my hand? I don't have a hand.
My avatar would just be a bunch of bones rolling down the hill.
Yeah, you'd just die.
Yeah.
You'd be if we take the bludgeon approach with you, Char, you'd probably be like one of those gun tanks from Gundam, where your upper body's still a robot, but your bottom half's a bunch of tank treads.
Oh yeah, that works.
The old Armada Demolisher.
Yeah, I'd just be pulling an Armada Demolisher at that point. No, I'd be doing the opposite, where both my arms have turned into guns, and my torso's like shrunk together. I'm just running on legs with the torso, with like a turret torso.
But yeah, the humor in the movie was a lot more palatable than what the trailers led us on with, and I'm very grateful for that.
And of course, they couldn't resist taking a pot shot to GoBots.
I think it's contractually obligated at this point.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone points out in regards to references the names on the Icon Race scoreboard.
Yeah, I did notice a few references.
Including some from G2, like Double Clutch and Mean Streak. I think those started out as a G2 GoBot names or something.
Maybe that was the GoBot that Alita One was talking about.
Yeah, maybe.
G2 GoBots.
We also, I mean, in this one we see Silverbolt. I can see, and we got Cliff Jumper. I could swear I saw Motor Master, but it seems like Motor Mouth was actually what I saw.
I think there's both.
I was a little.
I could have sworn I saw Motor Master as well, but maybe I just read Motor.
Yeah, and my brain auto-filled. I was a little disappointed because I was looking in the crowd trying to see if I could pick out Motor Master. I know it would have probably been too much to actually like model.
I don't think any of these names actually correspond to.
No, probably not. But it would have been nice. It would have been cool.
And the winner of the race was apparently Chromia, who in no way looks like Mirage.
Yeah.
Which is weird because Mirage got a toy for TF1.
Did he?
Yeah.
Was it one of the one-step
changer?
Yeah, he was in a 3-pack with Orion and D16.
Isn't he just like a retool of the Blur from RID 2015?
I don't think so. Wait, maybe. Let me see.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he looks like a retool of the one-step RID 15.
Oh, I see.
Which in of itself is a. Isn't that a version of the that's based on Rescue Bot's Blur, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. And then actually, I think all three of these are repaints of other toys. Because Megatron is pretty obviously, I think, Cyberverse Megatron, and the Optimus. I don't know. Maybe that's original to this movie.
And if you wanna play 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon here, Mirage's color scheme, as shown on the timing tower, there is the same colors as Rescue Bot's Blur.
I was going to say it looks like the flag of France.
Well, that's purple and gray.
France? I thought it was blue.
Mirage.
Oh. Anyway.
Of course, they had to get their references to the 86 movie in with that pose. The Orion strikes there.
Oh yeah, well, I'm beginning to think it's sort of becoming this franchise's Akira slide.
Yeah,
I'm getting a little sick of it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I hate to be so cynical about a franchise I do love, but it's like, come on, man, we can come up with something new for Optimus.
We all know it's the iconic pose for Optimus. You don't have to do it every time.
Yeah, because they did it like last year in Rise of the Beast.
Did they? I know Bumblebee they did for sure.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm sorry. I get the Rise of the Beast and the Bumblebee designs switched up in my head because they look so damn similar that I must have just misremembered. But it was like, it was cute once, it was cute twice, 3 times. Come on.
Yeah, it's getting a little.
Come on.
Maybe space it out at least.
Yeah, at least what Rune said is true. They didn't have them say one shall stand, one shall fall. That would have been a bit too much.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't fit anyway, considering this is Optimus and Megatron's first battle.
Well, they could have. I imagine like one way they could have implemented it if they wanted to would have been like a scene where they're wrestling or like having like a like one shall stand, one shall fall, and they have
Just,
like a.
they're just casually oiled up. It's like their day off. They're just grappling.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there are just at the end of the day just a lot of little references sprinkled in that if you don't know their origin, they don't necessarily subtract from the film or come off as distracting. Like even small touches such as the fact that D16's initial form, his helmet is colored black, just like his Marvel comics.
Oh yeah, that is one reference I quite liked was that yeah.
And Vector Prime's design is a straight lift of his Cybertron design. I clapped when I saw it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's the default design for Vector Prime now, but also, I like that it's Cybertron inspired, but at the same time, it doesn't capture the things that I like about the Cybertron design. It kind of just feels like they copied the look, but they didn't copy the soul of it. If you know what I mean.
I think he's colored. Well, sorry. He's designed like his Cybertron counterpart, but is colored like the aligned one from the Covenant of Primus.
Eh.
And of course, Alpha Trion's alt mode is something that they've been doing more regularly in the franchise. It's that horned lion, based off that cancelled BotCon idea.
Who wasn't even Alpha Trion? He was Cheetor.
Yeah, I assumed it was based on the. I assumed it was based on the Titan's Return design, but I didn't realize the Titan's Return design was based on something else.
Yeah, it's based off of the canceled BotCon Alpha Trizer, which was, I guess, retconned to be some form of Cheetor from the far future.
No, I'm not talking about the redeco of Thundertron. I'm talking about the redeco of Beast Machine Snarl.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
What, that was meant to be Trizer as well?
Yeah, I'm pretty, or maybe it was like retroactively decided to be Alpha Trizer.
Could be. And you know, apparently, like I saw this on Twitter. The Starscream's throne is shaped like his crown from the '86 movie.
Is it? Oh wow!
Apparently.
Maybe.
Oh yeah, I guess I did get things mixed up. My bad. Okay, yeah, they just referenced that toy when they made Alpha Trizer. Okay. Very weird choice of a redeco.
If we're done, shall we move on to something that I asked of the people in your server kit?
Yes. For those of you in the audience, before every episode, we ping everyone and ask for specific. We ask some questions to discuss on the show, and we get to feature some of the best answers. So if you want to take part in that, you can join my Discord server. The what am I calling it right now? The Crew of Kit, linked in the description. So our first entry is from DN Prime 17. The movie is great, and yes, the ending was obvious, but the journey was stellar. One of my nitpicks was the Megatron joke. Otherwise, I really don't have any complaints. The voice actor of Megatron, Brian Tyree Henry, knocks it out of the park, going from a bot who makes you think, this can't be Megatron, he doesn't sound anything like him, to a bot near the climax that makes you go, holy shit, that's Megatron through and through. Chris Hemsworth as Orion Pax, I was all for it. Again, home run. In general, the star-studded cast is amazing. I barely noticed it was a star-studded cast. Lastly, a note/theory. The second and third arc of the movie is Darkwing's fault. His anger at D16 and Orion made him disobey orders from Sentinel and set the rest of the movie in motion. Sentinel would have won if not for him. 9 out of 10. The point off is for Badassatron.
Badassatron.
Idiarn, you got to do it now.
Okay, all right.
Badassatron.
Runestone is plotting murder.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Who's going to assassinate me at the
that
next TF Nation?
I do have to agree with most of these points. I do like that I guess more people are going to start recognizing that everything in this movie is Darkwing's fault, basically, sort of, kind of. I think that's really funny that like half of this movie is because one guy got really pissy. He wasn't even like in the lead, right? Like he just got beat by them once. He went up to them and was like, "Oh, murders," and threw them down. And like the next day, there was a workers' revolution and stuff. So it was all for him.
Our next one is from Needle Nose Enthusiast. Does anyone else want to read it?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it. As probably one who has seen so many TF origin stuff, I admit that this film does a great job of being a new starting point. Some jokes I admit aren't my thing, like Badassatron. But the running away will never be not funny. Did I like the callbacks to other continuities? Yeah. Will Lorenzo try and say that this is connected to all the other films? Unfortunately, yes.
He said it was different. He said it was different. He got proved wrong.
I'll admit that this is good.
He's finally letting up.
I will admit that this is in the top 4 rankings of TF movies for me. Saying this is the best TF film is somewhat accurate, but I can't jump into that boat as I feel for the best Transformers films could be made in a different day and people are going to say it again then. But for what we got, 9 out of 10. Neil Nose Enthusiast. I understand the notion that this probably isn't the best Transformers, as in like, you know, it's very much a prequel. It's not a prequel to anything, but like it feels prequel, you know, like.
I mean, it's like
the platonic ideal of a Transformers prequel.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like what I mean is like it'll probably feel more concrete and solid once like a sequel comes out, if a sequel comes out and it's just as solid. Otherwise, I can totally see people preferring something like 07 or Dark and the Moon or Bumblebee or even like 86 over this still, you know?
Yeah. And it looks like our final selection is from Cryptid Person. Anyone want to take this one?
I'll take it. Transformers 1 was the TF movie I wanted back in 2007. A good bot-fashioned story with some of the best designs and moods from TF shows. Optimus has an innate sense of what's just/right, regardless of his situation/others' approval. Megatron is going from conformist to brute might depict his old psych theory building.
Might as in nay.
Pardon?
I think that's might as in nay, not might as in power.
Oh, right. Megatron going from conformist to brute might depict his old psych theory, bundling those traits together. F scale, maybe. Also see the paragraph about preschool study on Wikipedia's authoritarian personality type page. Also in one, the bots decide their own names/nicknames, but have to make them stick with everyone else. This makes great indirect characterization for the main 4. Cryptid Person.
I do want to bring up that Cryptid's post was quite a bit longer. His initial post, I asked him to condense it down for the sake of this podcast.
Jeez.
Well, I guess that brings us to our final thoughts on the film. And I guess this would also be a good time to talk about its legacy and what we may or may not expect in the future. Because as we know, this movie fucking bombed. The lowest grossing Transformers film to date. I believe it's already out of theaters. And
I'm gonna check real quick while we start. I want to see if it's still in my theaters, just out of curiosity.
I mean, I saw it just this week, so clearly it's still in some theaters.
I guess I am talking out of my ass. So,
though that being said, I think it's only like on a low level because it was hard to find it. Like I couldn't go to my local place.
Only theater to have it around me is like 10 miles away, which is a bit of a drive nowadays. So like, yeesh. Sad.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I don't really know what caused this movie to do so poorly. Maybe it was the marketing. Maybe it's just that like Transformers has kind of had a bad run of films lately, and like it's sort of got a poor reputation at this point. You know, Rise of the Beast didn't do so well either. Bumblebee did okay. The Last Night bombed as well.
I definitely think a major portion of this movie's failure is that Rise of the Beast was kind of stinky, and it came out like just over a year before this.
Yeah, that I think that's a big contributor is that Rise of the Beast in of itself bombed, and also Rise of the Beast was not looked upon favorably, unfortunately. And you know, even though this was a completely different team making this film, and these films were most likely made in parallel without much connection, you know, the average person is going to think, well, this Transformers movie sucks, so I'm going to presume that this next Transformers movie is also going to suck. Unfortunately, the film seems to be a victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
And its god awful marketing didn't.
I can't put it on the movie itself. I can't even say that there wasn't enough marketing. By the time it came out, I saw marketing on like billboards, internet ads, commercials.
It was just the quality of marketing.
Yeah, that plus like, I don't want to say this movie came out too soon after Rise of the Beast, right? I think it's cool that another TF movie is out so soon.
I don't know. I feel like that might be a thing. But, sorry, go ahead.
I think releasing it right after Rise of the Beast, a film that was very not in of itself, but like again, a film that in the grand scheme of things was very confused about what it was trying to be. Was it trying to be a sequel to Bumblebee, or was it trying to be a weird pre-sequel thingamajig for the Bayverse? And then now you're throwing in a brand new continuity in it. Like, you can't do that in this day and age. You know what I mean? Like I say what you will about how popular Marvel is. I still think it's pretty popular going off of something like Deadpool, right? We are still in a like post-Marvel age where most people go to see a movie franchise based off a popular IP and kind of expect everything to be like linked together. I feel like doing something like this was not against the movie itself, right? I think we all know that, but like in regards to how it was released and stuff, it was just kind of a bad move. Again, especially after the mediocrity of Rise of Beast's financial performance. I don't think Transformers, you know, contrary to what a lot of people have been saying since the movie came out, I don't think Transformers is a dying franchise. Well, yeah, I don't think it's a dying franchise. If anything, I think it's a franchise that has the opportunity to kind of blow up in the kind of, again, with where Marvel is right now, where it's doing kind of mediocre with like one big release a year that still makes a lot of money, which means it's still probably doing fine at the end of the day. I think there is probably a power vacuum that's going to be opening up in the next couple of years that like a billion IPs are going to kind of jump at. And I think Transformers has the opportunity to become something stupidly big again. But I think when they try and keep shooting out all these TV shows and movies and nothing's grabbing at people, I think they really got to get back and like maybe reinvent it to see not what sticks, but what could grow and gain a new audience, and also keep pre-existing fans glued to the seats or TV screens. It's just a shame TF1 got caught in like the crossfire of it, because again, I think my Final Thoughts on the movie, it's a super solid movie. It's a movie I could see myself watching like a bajillion times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that last part. This is probably the most rewatchable Transformers film for me.
Yeah. And again, this is more of a broader thing on Transformers, but I'll link it in the group chat if you guys want to watch it. It was a really good video. I think his name's like Sparkside or something like that. He's like another Transformer YouTuber in this space. He made a really good video talking about how Transformers kind of has a focus problem right now, where again, like including everything, Toyline movie, games, comics, TV shows. God, how many things has there been in like just the past like half decade, right? Cyberverse came and went. Earthspark is coming and going, with Cyber World coming up soon. There's been like 3 movies: Bumblebee, Rise of the Beasts, this movie. There's been a bajillion comics from IDW, and now Skybound starting small with just the main book. So many toy lines, so many like sloptacular games. I think at some point audiences have just become confused. Like, we can keep up with it, but also can we? I feel like even regular TF fans have gotten burnt at some point with just how much there is. I think this is a very real problem the franchise has, and something's got to change, because like the fact that the next big Transformer film got hit this badly in the box office, I think something needs to change, because otherwise, I really could see Transformers versus G.I. Joe being the first film to ever make like -$5 at the box office.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, the tonal whiplash is going to be crazy going from like a film like this to Transformers versus G.I. Joe. It's not going to be fun. And like,
I hope that movie bombs. It's gonna suck.
Yeah, it's probably gonna. I cannot see that movie doing well, because like it's gonna have to introduce the whole G.I. Joe cast along with doing a whole movie on its own with the Transformers cast.
Yeah, I don't think anything is going to make it as competent as what Skybound's currently doing.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to say good, because I don't think it's gotten good yet, but it's definitely serviceable.
When you say good, do you mean like the Transformers like self-titled series, or just Skybound Universe's integration of Joe into TF as a whole?
Yeah, I don't think it's reached the highs of Transformers yet.
Oh, you're talking about G.I. Joe's self-titled stuff, like Duke and Cobra.
Yeah, and like I think they're doing a lot of amazing groundwork in terms of integrating the two properties together in the same universe. I just don't think we've really seen much of a payoff on that yet.
No, I guess I really have to pick up those Joe books and also continue Transformers. I'm a couple of issues behind.
The issue of G.I. Joe number 1 was decent.
They're gonna have an uphill battle with this Joe TF movie. Like, I think if this flops, like TF1 unfortunately did, they have to stop. Like, for like just even a couple of years. Like, they have to go back to the drawing board. Like,
I think I just think they haven't done the appropriate groundwork for a crossover film.
Yeah,
it should have just been Sector 7, man. Like,
it took 4 years to go from Iron Man to Avengers.
Yeah.
It's 4 years, 6 films.
And like, even if we're talking just Transformers films, right? It still took like 4. It took 4 years from something like Sector 7 and Transformers having an uneasy relationship to like the end of Dark Moon. Also, I'll be back in one moment.
But yeah, this was a very, very decent movie done dirty by poor marketing and a poor context, I guess, cinematically speaking.
Yeah.
I'm glad it exists. We all get to enjoy it. That's my biggest takeaway from this is don't cry because it's over. I mean, for all I have heard rumblings that Paramount are looking into making a sequel for this because of the great word of mouth and critical reception. They probably understand that the movie didn't bomb because the movie was bad. It bombed for other reasons. So I do hope we do get an eventual Transformers 2 because the people involved did a great job. Could have been a little better, but could have been a lot worse. They did a great job. And I really hope we get a Transformers 2. But
Yep.
if we don't, don't cry because it's over. Just smile because it happened. Because this at least they can't take this movie away from you.
Yeah, on the whole, I really enjoyed the film. It's not perfect, not that I was expecting it to be, but the story's solid. Again, there are a few elements that aren't so much outright plot holes, but it would have been nice if they were more clearly addressed. I still stand by that the 13 primes, with the slight exception of Alpha Trion, are pretty underwhelming, even with the precedent that they'll be expanded on down the line. But most of the characters are well written. Like, everyone brings up the dynamic between Orion and D16 as one of the highlights, and rightfully so, though they actually stand pretty strong on their own, as does Lita. B-127 isn't quite as annoying as I'd feared he'd be. Sentinel's pretty much your classic power-hungry villain. The voice cast puts in a stellar performance, especially Brian. Is it Tyree or Tiri? I'm sorry.
Tyree.
Yeah, Tyree.
It's Tyree, yeah.
Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron. The technicals, from the animation to the sound work, top notch. Humor's a mixed bag. It's thankfully not quite as cringeworthy as the first trailer made it out to be. Overall, I had a fun time. Even if Transformers 1 turns out to be one of those films that many consider overrated in hindsight, given things like the negative stigma surrounding the Michael Bay movies, one doesn't do anything particularly egregious. It's just telling an origin story. And the fact that it's given us a lot to talk about shows that it's made an impact, to say the least. It's its own form of success when you really think about it. For now, I rate it 8 out of 10. It's probably my favorite Transformers film thus far.
Yeah, an 8 out of 10 is pretty fair, in my opinion. But we have talked about this film for longer than its runtime, so that means everything we say is invalid.
Yep, that's true.
That's how it
the
works.
law of Longman. It's Longman's rule.
So, shall we wrap things up?
Yes.
I'd say this was one of the most fun and interesting sessions we've done in a long time, because we actually got to analyze things and throw ideas back and forth, and I guess understand the movie a little better than before we went in. I'm very happy with how this episode's turned out, and we should do more media.
Yeah, again,
like
this kind of stuff spurs me to want to actually watch Transformers shows more in my spare time and movies and whatnot.
Yeah, I actually doing this podcast is what actually got me to go and see the film in the cinema, and I'm glad I did that. I had a good time.
That's stupendous.
I was a little disappointed that the cinema was basically empty, but I was going on a weekday in late in the afternoon, so not that much of a barometer, really, is it?
I went at the weekend, and the cinema screen where I went was for a while I was the only person in there.
Yeah, I was the only person in my screen at all. I think I hallucinated someone walking in, but
I think I saw it opening week. I went on a Tuesday because Tuesdays are when tickets are cheapest over here, and there were actually quite a few people. It wasn't anywhere near packed, but every row had at least a couple people on it.
My screening was crazy. Again, I saw an early screening, but it was packed with families and fans and collectors and stuff like that. And again, I didn't miss. I don't know if you guys are talking about, but I do think this film will have some kind of legacy. It will stick with the people that've seen it. It's
it'll definitely be a cult classic, the next film, I think.
When it comes to movies based on popular franchises and stuff, I usually don't see people talking about it this 2 months after it came out, but people still talk about it like crazy every day, and I think that's nice. Again, can't really say I see too many people talk about Rise of the Beast, and I don't like comparing Rise of the Beast to Wonder. Two different films doing two completely different things, but I feel like it's only natural, and I don't think Rise of the Beast left the even Makotum of the stuff that the feelings and whatnot that TF1 has left on people. which again, it happens. I'm just still shocked a movie that didn't do so well has seemingly clicked with so many people inside of Transformers fandom and just also like general public people, because the amount of people I've seen that have talked about this movie that I kind of follow online for reasons that have nothing to do with Transformers is insane. I think that's been really cool.
I can't think of anything better to wrap us up with.
Yeah.
Thank you for everyone to show up to this episode. This one's actually been a pretty active chat. A lot of eyes compared to some of our other episodes. So I'm glad to see everyone joining and enjoying themselves. This has been Kit Catastrophe, Dean of the Headmaster of the School of Athenia, joined by my 3 very esteemed deans, Rune Stone, ID Armed, and definitely not Char. We thank you once again for joining us, and we can't wait to see you on the next episode. Class dismissed.
Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.